Good evening and welcome to the Norwalk Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on June 17th at 8 p.m. And this is a special meeting. First, we will begin with a roll call. Brian, do you mind calling the roll?
Sure. Let's see. Commissioner Langallis,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Here.
Commissioner Hubers,
Here.
Commissioner Lankowski,
Here.
Commissioner Wells, Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Schulman,
Here.
and I don't think I missed anyone. Commissioner Bryce.
Here.
Quorum.
That's 9. Excellent.
Oh, sorry, Chapin. I muted you. I meant to mute myself.
Thank you. Given that we have 9 members here, we will have both Doug and Jay seated for the duration of this meeting. If JJ does join us, we'll have, Doug come off first, and then we'll switch between Doug and Jay in that case, but I'll call that once we have JJ joining us. Before we get started, I'll begin by welcoming our new members. So welcome Commissioner Doug Hempstead and Commissioner Jaquel Wilson. Excited to have you both on the commission. And also a congratulations to Diana for becoming a regular member on the commission. So yeah, welcome to, I guess, your second meeting since we had a joint meeting a little bit earlier tonight.
Thank you.
Of course. So with that, we will now move to the public hearings. One thing I would like to recommend to the commission is that we reorder slightly, where item D, which is the 314 Wilson Avenue application, I would recommend that we take that after item A, just as those are the ones that have external presenters on our call tonight. And then we can move to items B and C afterwards, as those are presented by staff. Are there any objections to that change of our agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to our first item, which is 2026-39 special permit, 200 Connecticut Ave LLC, 200 Connecticut Ave, District 5, Block 64, Lot 42, proposed car rental agency within existing garage, public hearing, report, and recommended action. Who this evening is representing 200 Connecticut Avenue?
Good evening. I'm Paul Lisi with Antonazzi Architects. I'm one of the principals here. And I also have with me Alex Gorovich, who's the owner's representative for the project.
Excellent. Before you begin, I just want to outline how the public hearing process works, just for folks who may want to speak a little bit later. So we'll begin by your presentation about this application. Commissioners will then have a chance to ask questions. At that point, we'll then move to the public comment, where they will have an opportunity to speak and provide comments on this application. Following that, you as the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to those comments made by the public, and commissioners can continue to ask questions. And then finally, we will move to a motion and deliberation for action. So with that, Mr. Lisi, please go ahead with your presentation for this application.
Great, thank you. So just a brief description of this application. It's essentially a request to provide a rental car business within a parking garage at 200 Connecticut Avenue. For those of you not familiar with the building, it's an 8-story, currently it's an 8-story office building with a multi-level parking garage below. And this project does not really require any physical work on the property other than putting in a pass-through window in the garage location. It's basically they're going to utilize one of the rooms that currently exist off of the garage as a small office. It's literally like 200 square feet. And then we're going to just dedicate, in this case, roughly 30 parking spaces for use for the rental car business. We have more than enough parking spaces, even utilizing the 30 for this business. We still have, I believe, over 30 more beyond that than what we require. Should I share my screen to show the drawings?
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, can you see my screen?
It is loading. And we see, yes, looks like review is opening.
Okay, I'm going to open up the other file first. Excuse me.
Right. We see the drawing.
Yeah, I actually want to open up this other one first. I'm sorry. Okay, so this is the ground floor of the parking garage and also is the lobby of the building, the main lobby of the building. This long, narrow room is an existing room. We're putting in a new door and simply putting in these transaction windows that you see here. And that is the extent of the physical work of this project. So this becomes a small rental office for the business. And now I want to share with you the other drawing, which is this is the existing parking level, what referred to as E and F. And we're just identifying the areas, the existing spaces. There's 16 spaces here that'll be dedicated, 6 here, 6 here, and 3 here. So there's actually 31 in total. Most likely, most of the time, there'll be much less vehicles in these spaces, but that's what's being, provided to the tenant for his car rental business. So I have here these calculations. This project also is, if you folks are aware, this building is also the building that's being converted, the upper 3 stories to residential units. That's already been approved by your committee. So in doing the calculations, the balance, there will be 35 residential units that require 46 spaces. The remaining office space requires 202 parking spaces. And the rental cars spaces, again, we designated 31. That totals 279, and there are currently existing 313 spaces. So we have more than enough spaces, even with dedicating those 31 spaces. So here's that location for that office area. So it's just right around the corner within the parking garage from the parking spaces. And this is the entrance off of 200 Connecticut Avenue. That's essentially the extent of the project.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Lisi? Go ahead, Galen. You're muted if you're talking. There you go. Now we can hear you.
How do the people get to the transaction window? Do they drive into they're renting a car, so.
Right. Well, I would imagine they would drive in and park temporarily in one location, or they would get dropped off. Many times if someone is renting a car, they would either get dropped off by someone else, or many times the rental car company actually goes and picks them up at times.
Okay, so they come in through the lobby, like you drop them off in the front of the building if you were going to drop someone off?
That's one way that they can get here, yes.
Or you could drive into the parking.
Yes, you could drive into the parking, and these are sort of designated visitor spaces in this area.
I see.
So they would park here and just walk over to the window here.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tammy?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Lisi. How many employees will be in the space?
I believe there'll be one employee that's full-time.
Okay, and where will they park?
Likely in one of the spaces because we're providing 31 and they don't really need, 31.
Okay, and do you have a car rental company that you're engaged with?
Alex, if you may.
Yes, we work. First of all, good evening, and thank you for allowing us to present this to you, to your committee. We work with Avis Rent-A-Car Company and one of the few larger ones, and we have them as tenants in multiple other locations that we have. So we were able to bring them in as a primarily an amenity to a lot of our office and the residential tenants. We believe that that would be a very good fit for the building.
Okay, thank you. And what about signage? Will you require?
They will be applying for their own signage, and they have a signage plan that they have studied very carefully the rules and regulations in Norwalk, and they will be compliant. No signs will go up without the approval, of course. They're
Okay.
very familiar with it. They're a pretty significant corporation that's been doing this for many years in multiple locations.
Thank you. And then just one last quick question. Will the residential parking and the access to the rental car company be the same? You're just coming in 200, or is there also entrance from the back off of Cedar Street?
Right. So most residential apartments will be entering through the Cedar Street location. There are multiple entrances and exits from the garage. But residential, we are planning for them to use the back of the building, which is in residential neighborhood versus the front, which is pretty much commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Are there further questions for the applicant? All right. Well, now, Mr. Lisi, do you have anything else that you would like to add before we open up the public participation?
No, I think we're all set. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So now we will move to the public comment. For those who wish to speak, there's only one opportunity to speak. We don't limit how long you can speak, but we ask that you are concise. This ensures that your points are clear and others will also have time to speak. This portion is not a dialogue, and the applicant will respond to all your comments at the end. We ask that you are polite and that you start with your full name and address. Brian, do you mind sharing how folks can participate in tonight's application?
Sure. Anyone from the public, if you'd like to speak, you can use the raise your hand tool to the bottom of your screen. Click that once. If you're dialing on a phone, you'd hit *9. Seeing none, Mr. Bryce.
All right. We will close the public participation for this application. At this point, I'll turn it back to Mr. Lisi. Is there anything else you would like to add for this application?
I think we've concluded our presentation. Alex, do you have anything to add?
Not only that we spoke with the economic development folks, and they very, very much enthusiastically but happy with the application that we're making, because we're bringing a business into Norwalk and quite a significant publicly traded entity.
Great. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, hearing none, is there a motion for this application? Tammy, is that a motion to approve? Yes. Galen, is that a second that I saw? Yes. Okay, great. Brian, do you mind bringing up the resolution? Great. Are there any modifications or discussion on this resolution? All right. Hearing none, Brian, do you mind calling the roll for this?
Sure. Commissioner Schulman,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Wells,
Yes,
Commissioner Lankowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Hubers,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Langallis,
Yes.
Commissioner Hempstead,
Yes.
and Commissioner Bryce.
Yes.
It's approved.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your consideration and effort. Thank you.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Next, we will move to item D on our agenda, which is 2021-29 Coastal Area Management, 314 Wilson Avenue, modification requests to conditions of approval to extend operating hours of previously approved coastal site plan for restaurant use, parentheses, beer garden, public hearing, report, and recommended action. Who here tonight is representing 314 Wilson Avenue?
George
Hi.
Rosa, and
I am Mr. Chairman. We have others with us.
Good evening. Please go ahead, Attorney Sachi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Liz Suchy. I'm a partner at Carmody Torrance Sandeck and Hennessy, 1055 Washington Boulevard, and we represent the applicant 314 Wilson Avenue Crystal LLC. Present this evening, who you may hear from, is George Veleza. He is the general manager of the beer garden, along with Mr. Joseph Grasso, who's the property owner. First of all, I would like to welcome back Mr. Hempstead to the zoning board, to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I would like to extend my welcome to Commissioner Wilson. I hope you enjoy your time on the commission. We filed a modification request of the coastal site plan approval for restaurant beer garden in February. We also modified that in May. The reason for the modification was we had originally sought to extend the hours of operation and the hours of live entertainment, but we decided not to extend the hours of live entertainment. So the only portion of the modification before you tonight is to extend hours of operation, which I'll explain in just a minute. Property owners within 100 feet of the property were notified by certified mail return receipt requested on June 2nd, and those green domestic return receipt cards or any letters returned as undeliverable were delivered to staff and should be part of your permanent file. The property is 314 Wilson Avenue. It's in the SDLI zone. It's about 30 acres in size. It's improved with a one-story warehouse industrial building that has various tenants. Among them is City Strong Athletics, Davy Tree Service, and various other tenants. It's to the, I guess it's the west of the storage facility and to the south of the Sono Ice Rink. To the east side is Village Creek and the Village Creek community further beyond that. Right now, there are about 170 parking spaces that serve this property. The 314 Beer Garden was approved several years ago, and then there was a modification in 2022 but live entertainment at that point was limited to 11 p.m. And then that live entertainment and the facility had to shut down. So the proposal before you is to extend the hours of operation Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 in the morning, but music and live entertainment would conclude still at 11 p.m. Saturdays extend the hours from noon to 1 a.m. And again, live entertainment would conclude at 11. And then on Sundays, extend the hours from 11 to 9 p.m. Right now, the hours conclude at 8 p.m. on Sunday, and live entertainment on Sunday must conclude at 6 p.m. And there would be no change to that extension. This extension would not change the live entertainment cessation at 6 p.m. on Sundays. That is the long and short of this application. We're not looking for a new beer garden. We're not looking to, as I said, change the hours that live entertainment is provided. We're not looking to change the lighting or the landscaping or the parking. It's strictly to extend those hours of operation, 2 hours each day, Monday through Saturday, and a few hours on Sunday, so that patrons who attend the beer garden after entertainment ends can stay for another drink, have a little bit more to eat, and then disperse after that. Those hours conclude. Very similar to any other restaurant where the hours can extend beyond, the hours are not limited to a certain particular time. The only difference here is that this commission deemed it appropriate years ago to set a restriction on how long live entertainment could continue at this site. At this point, I'd like to have Mr. Veleza walk you through the operations protocols that we have in place, how the beer garden is managed, what kind of safety protocols, what kind of protocols for patrons, clearing the site at the end of the evenings, and things of that nature. So if you wouldn't mind indulging me, Mr. Veleza can walk you through that. George?
thank you, Liz. So to just thank you again for having us in front of you guys today. We are grateful to have the opportunity for this extension. The typical day at the beer garden begins with a property sweep to ensure that there are no issues around the property, ensuring there are no safety issues in any of our rooms, working with security to maintain the proper levels of occupancy during hours of operation, working hand in hand with our professional security team to make sure that we are maintaining internal security as well as external. The long and short for us is making sure that we have and are abiding by all statutes within our four walls, but also during the live entertainment times, which typically begin between 7 and 7:30 p.m. We take on-site decibel readings every evening to ensure that we're within the law for our city noise ordinance, and continue to run those throughout the evening 3-4 times, depending on initial volume checks. And then as we conclude the evening, before myself or any of the security team goes home, we do a parking lot sweep to ensure that all of our patrons have either left in their own vehicles or have Ubered home. There's no one leaves the property until we know that all of our patrons have exited our facility, and we have done a clean sweep through the bathrooms, through the facilities on property, as well as the surrounding parking lots that we have within our district.
Thank you, Mr. Verleza. And just for the record, there have not been any noise violations for which we've been cited, that we have not complied with the city's noise ordinance, and that I think is confirmed by an email that Police Chief James Walsh provided, which we submitted to staff, that indicated there haven't been any noise violations at the site. Now, neighbors have contacted the police department. They have expressed concerns about noise, but those noise volumes have not been demonstrated to be in excess of what the noise regulations permit us to, the decibel levels that we're permitted at this site. We think we've been a responsible neighbor. Just some information that you might be interested to know. The Village Creek Homeowners Association contacted me on June 6th about a June 8th board meeting and asked us to attend, and Mr. Verleza did attend that meeting to discuss what we proposed and to answer some questions and address some concerns that the Village Creek Homeowners Association had. We also received some correspondence last week on Thursday from Mr. Conroy, who was a principal at the Sono Ice Rink, and Mr. Verleza and Mr. Grasso have been interacting with Mr. Conroy over the past 3 days to ensure that whatever questions they had or other requirements or agreements they wanted to reach, that Mr. Verleza and Mr. Grasso have been in touch with Mr. Conroy. So I think between that activity, between the voluntary decibel readings that we do when we have live entertainment, which have all revealed that we're within the code, and the noise ordinance maximum decibel level readings, I think that demonstrates that Beer Garden has been a good corporate citizen and tries to be a good neighbor when it's operating. That generally concludes what we like to do. Again, we're not looking to extend hours for music. It's strictly to have another 2 hours after generally music ends, so the patrons can leave leisurely during the week, and then some additional hours on Sunday. If you have any questions for me, Mr. Verleza, or for Mr. Grasso, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. One question I had was a piece of public comment that I believe came in today, which was about the parking lot that abuts the sound, where there were concerns about around like at 11:30 p.m. about both lights from vehicles and sounds from vehicles reaching their property. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to review that comment, and curious if you have considered any mitigations for that. One thing that comes to mind is screening that may be useful in that location. I understand there's no site plan for us to see today as it was a change to hours, but wanted to raise that as something that came in through comments earlier today.
Well, I'd like to just address part of that, and then I can have Mr. Verleza address another part of it. If you are not aware of the site, in the back of the site that faces Village Creek, there is a rather substantial earthen berm with plantings atop of it. So that does provide a good degree of screening, at least in terms of lights that may come from vehicles. One thing that we are looking at, and I'll just put this out right now, is some members of Village Creek had expressed concern about lighting in general. Some of the lighting that seems to be problematic comes from the self-storage facility, which has tall stanchions and also building lights. However, having said that, we're looking at putting some of the lights that we have on the back of the building on sensors so that they would not be necessarily on all the time. But we do need lighting in the back for safety and security because tenants do take advantage of their space on off hours. George, could you answer the question of perhaps patrons in the back and addressing how we might be able to perhaps do a better job at that, or whatever you may have heard from neighbors about something that occurred over the weekend?
Yes, so something that did occur over the weekend was that I know people left on the later side on Saturday due to the conclusion of the Knicks game. And after they had left, again, we did our clean sweep of the parking lot. I cannot hold us responsible for how somebody drives when they leave, namely the revving of the engines that I noticed in the email. But we are taking every pain to ensure that all guests are leaving safely, properly, and within the legal limits. And we do have signage up on that back lot trying to tell any customers that are parking. One of the lots that was cited does belong to Crystal LLC and therefore 314 Beer Garden. The secondary one does have some signage that is not in conjunction with 314 Beer Garden parking. It has signs that say no parking on them. But yes, that was just brought to my attention 2 hours ago, so I've been looking into that.
Thank you. Are there other questions for the applicant? All right, hearing none. Attorney Sachi, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we open public comment?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything else at this time. We're certainly, as I said, happy to answer any of the questions that may arise, but we look forward to hearing what other comments the public may have and respond to them during rebuttal. Thank you.
Of course. All right, we will now move to the public comment. So for members of the public who wish to participate, you will only have one opportunity to speak, though we will not limit how long you may speak. We ask that you are concise. This ensures that your points are clear and others also have time to speak. This portion is not a dialogue, and the applicant will have an opportunity to respond at the end of all comments. We ask that you are polite and that you begin with your full name and address. Brian, do you mind sharing how folks can participate in this application?
Sure. So any folks from the public who would like to participate, you can use the raise your hand tool now. It's located at the bottom of your screen. You click that once, and if you're dialing on a phone, you'd hit *9. With that, we'll start with Miguel Frasconi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Great. Good evening. Thank you. I have a pre-written statement. I'm Miguel Frasconi. I live at 26 Dock Road in Village Creek. I'm also presently the president of the Village Creek Homeowners Association Board of Directors. The VCHOA board did send a letter, an official letter from the community, and what I'm commenting here is my personal comments. So let's see, all 65 houses in Village Creek are presently being accosted by from both sides of our little peninsula, Manresa Wilds to our east and Beer Garden to our west. The Beer Garden started having live and loud outdoor music years ago. And to my recollection, there was no warning or notification for that. I could be wrong. I really have no understanding of how an outdoor live music venue was allowed to go into business so far from any commercial center and so close to residential properties. I have lived in Village Creek for 65 years, and aside from being redlined in our first 30 years, the sound pollution caused by the Beer Garden and the light pollution caused by the other buildings in its complex is the worst assault on our daily lifestyles we have ever had. I'm relieved and pleasantly surprised by the thorough notifications we have been given for the proposed extension of the hours of operation. However, given that the Beer Garden should not be there to begin with, I personally do not see any way these extra hours would be a good thing for anyone in Village Creek or even for those living west of Wilson Avenue. Yes, the music, both live and pre-recorded, will still end at 11, but please keep in mind that this is an outdoor venue where at 11 p.m. their customers will already be filled with beer and adrenaline and will not be inclined to use their indoor voices for any outdoor setting. The clients who remain there until 1 p.m. have no idea and thus no consideration that there are people trying to sleep less than 100 feet away. If this was an indoor venue in a busy commercial area, there would be no problem. But there should not be any sort of outdoor venue anywhere on Wilson Avenue that stays open until 1 a.m. I am also very concerned about the local roads, which at 1 a.m. will be filled with drivers who will be 2 hours more drunk than they were at 11 p.m. The beer garden has been nice enough to offer to build a sound wall. Anyway, anyone with more than minimal knowledge of acoustics will know that this will make very little difference and possibly make things worse. A wall will stop higher frequencies, but high frequencies already drop off before reaching any houses. It's the low frequencies that cause the sound pollution. These low frequencies are made of waveforms that are at least 12 feet long and will not be stopped by any wall. In fact, a wall could possibly further amplify these low sounds to the wall's resonant frequencies and make these sounds even louder when they reach any private property. If a wall is planned, an acoustician should be involved in its design. But the only type of construction that will certainly retain the sound of live music and or rowdy crowds are walls and a well-insulated roof. If I may, I would like to read from the recent Norwalk ordinance on leaf blowers. I'm unclear why these reasons don't apply to all types of low frequency sound, including outdoor music venues. And it goes, the ordinance reads, quote, and you can easily substitute leaf blowers for beer gardens. So, quote, leaf blowers represent a significant source of environmental pollution in the form of high and low frequency noise. Noise generated by leaf blowers interferes with the physical and psychological well-being of persons, as leaf blowers generate low frequency noise at high decibel levels, exposure to which has been determined to generate severe adverse health effects. Why can we not use the same reasonings for outdoor music venues? Low frequencies have the same effect on people regardless of their source. One Village Creek resident had to move because she was experiencing adverse effects from the hours upon hours of live, loud music shaking her house every weekend. 314 Beer Garden is in an absolute wrong location for any outdoor live music and alcohol venue, and thus any extension to what already exists would also be wrong. And that concludes my statement.
Thank you.
Next, we have Zachary Phillips.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
All right. Good evening. Thank you, commission members. My name is Zach Phillips. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Wofsy Rosen at 600 Summer Street in Stamford. I have the pleasure of representing 300 Wilson Avenue Partners, LLC, who owns the abutting property at 300 Wilson Avenue, which is the location of the Sono Ice House. I'm here to express a concern that my client has about the beer garden. But I wanted to start by just saying that I'm not here to oppose the application. My client is happy that the applicant and their business are successful, has no animosity towards the beer garden or the applicant, and hopes for their continued success. But my client does have one concern in particular that I'm here to raise today, and that has to do with the parking at the beer garden, particularly the applicant's failure to control the parking of its customers who frequently park on my client's property, which affects my client's tenants' operations and presents safety concerns at my client's property. And my understanding is this has been going on for a while and has been a persistent problem that while there have been some discussions, there has not been a resolution to the satisfaction of my client. And we're raising this concern today because our concern is that extended hours of operations for the beer garden would lead to extended improper parking on my client's property. And so, like I said, I'm not here to oppose the application, but I am here to request that the commission impose a reasonable condition of approval requiring that the applicant take reasonable measures, whether that's the use of parking attendants or otherwise, to control the parking of its customers and ensure that its customers park on the applicant's property and not the neighboring properties. So with that, I thank the commission for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Next, we have Elizabeth.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Hayden. I live at 16 Split Rock Road in Village Creek. And thank you everyone for your civil service here and this opportunity to speak to this request from the beer garden. So I live about a football field length. So, you know, Joe Namath could have thrown a football into the beer garden from my bedroom, and the noise, I hear loud conversation even when music is not playing. And I'm talking about, you know, beer steins in the air, kind of, you know, joyful beer talk. I can hear it from my bedroom. And I'm not looking forward to hearing that till 1 a.m. I know that the other things that go on over across Wilson Avenue aren't supposed to happen till I think 7 o'clock is start time. But in actual fact, there's noise 24/7. So this would just be more noise. There are dumpsters that get moved at 2, 3 a.m. They're beeping trucks. So cumulatively, I know we're just talking about the beer gardens extending their hours, but cumulatively, there is just so much noise irregularly happening during the course of the 24-hour cycle that this just adds to it. So therefore, I'm opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ben Hampeter.
Hi, y'all can hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Great. My name is Ben Handpeter. I live at 14 Haviland Street, and I'm in favor of the proposal to expand the hours. I think 314 is a fantastic venue. I go there pretty frequently, and I think it's a great asset to Norwalk. It's a wonderful third space that attracts a huge variety of different people, and is a real asset to the city. And I think that 314's success is Norwalk's success. And I think in the spirit of that, it is a good thing to expand the hours and, you know, expand what it can do for the community. So, all that being said, yeah, I would suppose that the hours do be expanded. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anyone else would like to speak, please use the raise your hand tool now. It's located at the bottom of your screen. You can click that once. Seeing nothing further.
Great. So we'll close the public participation, and I will turn to Attorney Suchi to address the public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would, I'd like Mr. Verleza to speak to the issue of additional acoustical sound attenuation that we're considering, and then I'll address some of the other comments that members of the public have made. I also like Mr. Verleza to share with you what the protocol is for alcohol service and alcohol consumption, because I think that was something that was raised, and it's important that you know how we handle that. So George, if you would take those two issues, then I'll wrap up at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Suchi. So to speak to the attenuation of the sound, one of the things Mr. Grasso and I have started exploring and have been exploring is the addition of internal decibel controllers that I can personally control. And we've already added an internal noise controller, meaning that now, as opposed to some of these bands and DJs needing large commercial grade speakers like you would see in stadiums, I can now put them through our house speakers at not such a high decibel level to help with that sound, as well as the potential addition, and again, the foregone conclusion of an addition of some soundproofing on our stage area and an enclosing of the stage area to make it just a bit quieter for the neighbors to our north and our south here, as we do want to be the best neighbors we possibly can be for everyone around. And again, I thank you for your time on that matter. The second point was to the proper alcohol service, whereas all of my staff, security, bartenders, servers, anyone that's serving any alcoholic beverages have been properly trained on a program called TIPS, TIPS, which ensures that they understand the signs of, before they get to over serving customers and not allowing people to leave in vehicles have they had more than their fair share. My security guard team is incredibly competent in their abilities to notice the signs of intoxication, and we do take keys from guests that we believe to be intoxicated. And we do work hand in hand and are on the route for Wheels to You, who has been a partner of ours for some time, that works with some private events on our sector as well. And we are a major Uber stop down here as well. So we have done everything within our means and our power to stop the influence of anyone driving out of here drunk. And sometimes that does mean that the cars do get left in our parking lots, not in the 300 Wilson Avenue parking lots. We do try to, like I say, just offer the safest and most quality service we possibly can for all of our customers and all of our neighbors.
Mr. Veleza, one last question. Would you kindly share with the commission what you had suggested to the neighbors at 300 Wilson Avenue Partners as additional measures to make sure that parking of our patrons does not bleed into the Sono Ice Rink parking lot? You had
Yes.
discussions and there was an agreement of sorts reached today.
Yes, we Mr. Grasso and I have come up with a plan. We already at present have a parking attendant on what we deem to be at our discretion, our busiest nights and busiest seasons, and that is a person in a golf cart that is driving around the property to make sure that our guests know where to park. Now, since that is only one person and the issue at hand is with the direct parking lot at 300 Wilson Avenue, we are offering up the addition of a second parking attendant to discourage guests from our patrons from parking in the Sono Ice House lot.
Thank you, Mr. Veleza. Mr. Chairman, just in response to some of the other comments that were raised, while I appreciate Mr. Frasconi's position, this is an approved use. This has been an approved use for several years. And so not understanding how or that it should not be here, the use is approved, the times of operation have been approved. That's not something that's under dispute right now or is subject to change right now. The only change is the extended hours of operation. We are obligated to abide by the noise ordinance. The information from your police chief has demonstrated that we have not violated the noise ordinance. Sometimes noise to one may be noisy, it may be disruptive, but it has to violate the noise ordinance for us to be subject to citation and then be subject to further action by the city, and that has not happened. There really isn't any relevance to describing to you and sharing with you the leaf blower ordinance. What applies is the noise ordinance, and we are subject to it, and we will abide by it and have abided by it. As far as Attorney Phillips is concerned, perhaps some of the problems that are being experienced at 300 Wilson Avenue are the fact that there are many boats and boat trailers occupying a good portion of that lot, preventing Sono Ice Rink patrons from parking in their own lot, and also providing a safety, security, and negotiation issue within the lot. Just last night, there were probably 50 parking spaces that were used by either boats or boat trailers, and some of the aisles of transit through the lot were blocked off by those trailers. So perhaps that's something that 300 Wilson Avenue should take a look at, and maybe that might make it a little bit more safer and provide better parking resource on their own site. Having said that, though, as Mr. Veleza indicated, we're proposing to provide another parking attendant. On all the receipts that our patients receive when they leave the site, it indicates you cannot park in the Sono Ice Rink parking lot, so they're aware of it for the next time they arrive. There were 11 signs posted in the Sono Ice Rink parking lot by my client that says parking is not available here for the beer garden, and you're subject to towing. I think they've done everything they possibly can to make sure that the relationship between the Sono Ice Rink and the beer garden is a good one. But that, again, is a private property matter between the Sono Ice Rink and the beer garden, not a zoning matter. It's unfortunate that some are more sensitive to noise than others. But again, we're doing everything we can to make sure that it's mitigated when needed, that we comply with the noise ordinance, and that Mr. Grosser and Mr. Veleza are looking at additional options to help attenuate noise even better so that the disruption is less. I have nothing further to add at this point. I would hope that you would move the matter forward and grant the request as stated. And we look forward to any other questions you may have, but that concludes our presentation at this time.
Thank you. Are there questions for the applicant? Yeah, please go ahead, Jay.
Mr. Velaza, quick question. You mentioned that there is a staff training for, I guess I would say overly intoxicated folks. And I just wanted to double hear that.
There is a staff training called TIPS, which is to ensure proper service to make sure we do not overserve guests. Right. And it shows and demonstrates to all the staff members serving alcohol to recognize warning signs of somebody reaching a limit.
Perfect. Thank you.
And that is required by our insurance company. So every single person that serves alcohol has gone through that course.
So hypothetically, like a security guard too, then?
Yes, the security guards are guard trained as well. Yep.
Are there other questions for the applicant? Oh, go ahead, Tammy.
Thank you. This could be for Attorney Sachi or Mr. Berleza. Did you, when you asked for the extension of hours, consider midnight instead of 1? I'm just curious why the 2 hours.
George, I think that may be something you have to answer.
So the 2-hour extension, the reason why we went with that number is because of our private party sector that gets a lot of traction from people from out of town meeting up for reunions, family reunions, high school reunions, what have you, and being able to then build in another time block for parties. So typically right now they'll run from 8 to 11 as the latest time slot, but now we can run one, and they're 3-hour time slots. Now we can run one from 10 to 1 a.m. as well. So that is why we went forward with a 2-hour time slot. And as well, you know, it felt like it was the proper hour exception.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions for the applicant? All right, Attorney Sachi, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, I do not at this time. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion for this application? Go ahead, Lou. You're muted though, so.
Maybe people would prefer that.
Not tonight.
I don't wish to make a motion.
Okay.
I just wish to speak very briefly. I'm sympathetic to the concerns of the Village Creek residents. And although it doesn't appear that the business is violating any noise regulations, I can still understand that just people who are drinking and talking can make an awful lot of noise, and it can be a significant nuisance if you live nearby. So I am not going to support this request, although personally wish the business well.
Thank you, Lou. Go ahead, John.
I can make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second for the motion to approve? Thank you, Jay. Brian, do you mind bringing up the resolution?
Sure. Now, just so for clarification on the resolution, how I prepared this was, it is really out of the ordinary for us to restrict the hours of operation of a restaurant use in the city. I don't think we do it anywhere else. I had wrote this resolution so that we would no longer regulate the hours of operation of the restaurant use and just restrict the hours to the live music.
I agree with that take. Just from a compliance and perspective, it's easier to focus on the live music piece than the hours of operation. although I have heard the applicant make representations tonight that they're willing to make some changes in order to improve the noise profile and attenuation for neighbors. Some of the things I heard tonight was about routing the sound through the house speakers so that they could control and limit the volume, as well as having that additional parking attendant and adding soundproofing around the stage in order to dampen it. So, I'll put it to the commission as a question of, do we want to add some conditions in here for them to, say, work with staff on making those improvements that they've shared this evening as a part of us removing the hours of operation condition? Hearing none, go ahead, Tammy.
Or I'd support adding what you said, adding the conditions explicitly. I think that makes sense.
Okay. Tammy, did you have something to add as well?
Well, I wanted to ask you, Chapin, if you are making suggestions to change the resolution or add to the resolution.
Yeah, I think it would be worth adding those three items in, maybe even within an item 2, just to say, to work with staff on implementing those proposed solutions that they've provided this evening. It seems like it's something they're amenable to, and it hopefully will help address those neighbor concerns with the noise levels.
Is the beer garden technically considered a restaurant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Since John, you made the motion and Jay, you seconded, are you okay with these modifications? Good.
I'm good with I agree with what's being added currently as well. So
Great.
I'm all good.
Okay, great. We'll reconfirm that once Brian's typed out the language. Thank you, Brian. Maybe for the applicant's sake, I'm happy to enumerate those 3 here, so it's not so open-ended to interpretation.
Yeah. Yes, please.
So I would say 1 is routing the sound to the house speakers to control the volume level to acceptable decibel limits. Great. Do we want to use live music there, since it's our... Great. The second one was adding sound dampening or proofing, maybe attenuation is the better word. I think it's ATT, attenuation.
You are right.
I'm a terrible speller, but I think that's right. Word agrees with you.
I guessed an E and I was wrong.
Yeah, I think they said to the stage, but I think we can also just leave that open, like adding sound attenuation like to the venue. Yeah. And then the last one was adding an additional parking attendant to help with the neighbors' parking concerns.
Yeah, that's the only one I don't know if we should
ahead.
condition, since it's more of a private property matter.
Okay.
For them to kind of figure out with the neighbor.
Okay. I'm happy to not have that one in there. So then I think we can get rid of C. Cool. John and Jay, are you both okay with the modification here?
Correct.
Thumbs up. Great. Wonderful. Is there any other modifications or discussion for this resolution? All right. Brian, do you mind calling the roll? Oh, John, is there something before we take the vote? No? Okay.
Start with Commissioner Schulman.
No.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Wells.
Yes.
Commissioner Lankowski.
No, I second Mr. Schulman's concerns, and I feel that the issue of the sound vibrating across the water and the noise level at closing is very significant in this case.
Commissioner Hubers,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Langallis,
I'm going to vote no for the similar reasons cited by Commissioner Schulman and Lankowski.
Commissioner Hempstead,
Boy, this is not like me. I'm going to abstain just because I wasn't here for the prior discussion of this. And I can understand the concerns of the neighborhood, but also the viability of having the beer garden there because I hear it's a nice place to be. So I'm going to abstain just because of lack of prior participation.
Thank you.
and Commissioner Bryce.
Yes.
That is 5 in favor, 3 opposed, and 1 abstention. So the motion carries.
Thank you, everyone, for your attention and your thoughtful comments tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item on the agenda, as we have reordered the agenda slightly, is item B. It is 2026-31 regulation change, City of Norwalk zoning regulation text amendment to Articles 4 and 9 relating to fee in lieu of public realm, screening of parking, and the definition of dwelling unit, public hearing, report, and recommended action. Brian or Steve, are you leading the presentation on this?
Sure. Brian, do you mind pulling it up and I'll just walk everybody through it quick?
Give me 1 second.
Sure. And just a little bit of background for public edification. The staff and the commission has been proactive on making changes when we have found that the new regulations, and when I say new, they're 2 years old now, but the new regulations have I would say universal problems where we find that there are issues with the code that are impacting, more than one property and things that we think should get adjusted for the sake of betterment of the zone or the neighborhood or the community. So we've been looking at that, and when these arise, we bring them to the attention of the commission, and then we go through the process of modifying the regulation to kind of adjust that. So the first one is a change to the public realm requirements. Just for everybody's knowledge, public realm is a requirement in certain zones, and basically it requires a certain amount of public space in certain developments. So it's not all hardscape, or it's not all building or parking. There's an area, like an easy way to think of it is there might be a outdoor seating area or some other public space that's required as part of a development where people can kind of enjoy the site and get access to it, even if they're not particularly a resident of that facility. So we're looking at a couple different changes now. And looking at them, basically, if you're in 2 different zones, a couple changes. If you're in the CD3C zone, and the CD3C zone, the easy way to think about that is that's basically Route 1 and Main Ave. So that's kind of the larger retail commercial core pieces of the city. And if you have lots of less than 50,000 square feet, and that's just over an acre of lot area, they can opt to pay a fee in lieu of the requirement. Or if you're within the CD4 zone, and the CD4 zone is basically the urban core area of the city that stretches up from Route 1 down through West Ave and Wall Street, down into South Norwalk, just south of the train station. And what we came up with there is if you have a historic building, you can be exempt from the public realm. And the rationale for that is if you're in a historic site, there might be limitations built into the property or characteristics of the property that make providing that public realm difficult. And the other thing we looked at is if you're on a lot that is less than a quarter of an acre and within 500 feet of a designated park, that you can opt out of providing the public realm, provided that you pay a fee in lieu to the city. And that fee in lieu would go into a dedicated fund based on the census block that you're in, and those funds could be put towards improving an existing park. Maybe there'll be an opportunity for the city to gain public land in that area, and you can use those funds towards that. But the idea being that there are certain types of projects that providing that fee in lieu might not make sense, and it might be a better use of assets and funds to be put towards other types of projects. So that's the first change that's in front of you. And again, this just kind of shows a couple of examples of the slide in the middle. There is a project that got approved at Day Street. And if you can see in the image on the left, there's that little green patch. That was the public realm. And we're kind of like, is that really serving a public good? So we decided, you know what, it's probably better not to have that in these types of projects. So that's the kind of the change. And the last image down below is that 500-foot radius of where a park is. And so that kind of shows you, okay, if you're in 500 feet, that's a pretty short walk, and that seems like a doable distance and maybe an appropriate distance for determining whether the public realm is really necessary in these circumstances or not. And again, last bit, there are some rules related to the type of streets that we regulate this for. The idea being there are certain streets where we require street activation. And a good thought about that is, okay, maybe these areas have outdoor dining, or they have public amenities that are available. So on those streets, we really want to make sure that they do have that street activation. Okay, Second Amendment is something that came up, and this was brought to our attention by somebody looking to develop a piece of property in South Norwalk. And it's specific to corner lots. And there's a tricky thing in the regulations where the new standards really, their goal is parking should not be seen. And that's kind of an easy way to think about it. And one way that gets accomplished is by putting in something called a liner building. And a liner building is basically a functional space that screens the parking from the street. And within that liner building, it actually has to be usable space. However, that creates problems on corner lots that are narrow. When I say narrow, that means the depth from the street to that opposite property line that goes to the back end. The reason is most developments, when they put in parking, put in a double row of parking, and each one of those rows has a minimum dimension of 20 feet for the stall depth, and then they have a 20-foot to 22-foot drive aisle in between. So you're already up close to 65 feet. And if you try to put in a liner building in that with a minimum depth of 20 feet, you've eaten up the entire property, and you can't actually install the parking plus comply with the liner building requirement. So we've built in an exception to that, which basically allows on corner lots with a lot site width that's less than 85 feet, they can screen the parking. They still have to screen it, so that's an important distinction to make, but they can do that with a facade or a different type of screening that hopefully looks and blends in with the aesthetic of the building, but doesn't necessarily have that kind of functional usable space behind it. That's the Second Amendment in kind of a nutshell. And the third one is the simplest one of all, probably the simplest one you'll see. This was a recommendation that came from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and it's a very simple change to the definition of a dwelling unit. You can see the crossed out kitchen, which is capitalized. The question that came up in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals was, well, this doesn't mean that I can have only one kitchen. Why can't I have 2 or 3 kitchens? Because the rest of the text talks about sleeping quarters, eating quarters, sanitation facilities. So we wanted to draw a clear distinction that says if you have a single family dwelling or you're in a dwelling unit has a kitchen, so a singular kitchen. So I think that's a clear distinction. I think it removes any ambiguity to the definition, and I think removes that kind of part of the conversation should it arise again. So that's the third one in a nutshell. I think that one's pretty simple. I'm happy to take any questions, comments, concerns that the commission has about any of these.
Go ahead, Doug.
Just interpretation, when you say dwelling of single family, so if you put an au pair addition on, or a, now I'm spacing on the name, you're adding on to the building, but it's a separate unit, right?
An ADU?
Yeah, so I'm just saying, is the way it's described, is that two dwelling units or one dwelling unit? How would you you follow I'm trying to go here with that?
Yeah,
So
each one would, so the main house and the ADU would both be dwelling units, and each one could have a kitchen.
Okay, I'm just asking because the older days they used to attach them to the house itself. They convert a garage into a in-law apartment or something like that. And I'm just trying to say that's a family residence. And
so they could still attach it today, and if they did that, they could have a kitchen within that separate dwelling.
Okay. You may want to just clarify it a little bit more. I mean, if they had upset about kitchens, I could have kitchens that were the reverse.
Yeah, so the ADU would be considered a dwelling unit, and the main house would be considered a dwelling unit. So each one of those could have a kitchen.
Okay.
And
can I ask a question?
Can be attached. Yeah. Yep. Go ahead, Doug. Sorry.
That's right. No. Could you go back to the parking? Because I got a question.
The screening of the parking?
Keep going. So if I'm just gonna throw something out there. So the lot on West Avenue across from St. Mary's that has the Dunkin' Donuts and some other things in it, I'd say that's probably a little bit less than an acre. So this would allow, if I was developing that, I could pay a fee in lieu of parking and completely develop the site? Question mark.
Well, I think that's in the next amendment. That's in the next application. I think that's what you're referring to. This amendment is public realm, not parking spaces.
Okay.
So we have two. There's another application after this. That's all the parking changes.
And then you're also saying if I had a single family home or something on a 0.20 lot, and I'm 500 feet of any park, I don't need any driveway or parking anywhere on my lot.
That is the next amendment. Yeah, that's not so. There's three with this, and we separated out the parking because all those parking related ones are in response to some state legislation that we're dealing with.
Yeah, some context. We split the parking one separate as we weren't sure on timing, and we knew that the parking one had a hard deadline of when we needed to get that done. So this one we separated out because we didn't know whether or not it was going to be tonight. So this one, and specifically what's on the screen, is just about the public spaces and parks. But we'll do parking as item C on our agenda. So after we finish this hearing, we'll go to that one.
Yeah. Okay. The only other thing I would ask is the funding for this, because some of that was going to work. When they first did Waypoint, there were public spaces within those developments. It was the attempt to get, I'm trying to think of the kind of zone it is, where we could charge fees for entertainment and all that kind of stuff. And
designed it.
Yeah. It's actually still in the ordinance unless they took it out. It's still there when they adopted it. The thought was the city was going to build public parking along with the private development that was going on, and that all got abandoned. Now, because to me that makes sense when you say if you're building something, you get to use the parking lot as public space. But the state, in its uninfinite wisdom, kind of said you don't need any structures of any kind of parking for anything. Correct? Am I over interpreting how this
It might
kind
be
of.
good for us to revisit this in the next hearing when we're diving into parking a
Okay,
lot
I'm
more.
sorry.
Yeah,
All right,
it's all
sorry.
good.
See, that's a problem.
Thank you, Doug.
I'm late to the game.
Yep.
I'm late to the game here. Sorry.
All good. Yeah, let's come back to that in the next one, because I'm sure we'll have lots of discussion about parking. Yep. Are there other questions for staff on these amendments? All right. We will move to the public comment then. For those from the public who wish to speak on this application, and as a reminder, this is about the public realm screening of the parking and the definition of a dwelling unit. You will be able to speak in a moment here. You will only have one opportunity to speak. While there's no limit on how long you may speak, we ask that you are concise. This ensures that your points are clear and others have a time to speak. This portion is not a dialogue, and staff will respond to all comments at the end. We ask that you are polite and that you begin with your name and address. Brian, do you mind sharing how folks can participate in this application?
Sure. So if anyone from the public would like to speak, you can use the raise your hand tool now. It's located at the bottom of your screen, and you click that once. If you're dialed in on a phone, you'd hit *9. We have Diane Cece.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good evening, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to new Commissioner Wilson and to Doug Hempstead. Good to see you. Welcome back in this new capacity. And hello, everyone. Olmsted Place in East Norwalk, by the way, and I'm also I'm tagged in as the neighborhood association, but on this particular application, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I had a question that I hope staff will answer, because maybe some of you have the same question, and then just a comment. When I look at the zoning map, I don't think that there's any designations in East Norwalk proper that fall under either of those 2 or 3 zones there, and I just wanted to get clarification on that. But in general, I would say personally, I'm not a big fan of payment in lieu of anything. I think that it's a mechanism to have people avoid what otherwise would have been required, and the reason why it would being required in the first place is that there was some intent on the part of the community to want whatever it is that you're now giving away there. So in general, I don't think that that's a good idea, but I do understand it in this particular case. The other question that I had was a matter of the wording in there. I believe that it said that any payment in lieu of the public realm would go into a specific fund in the city. So and so that doesn't go into the general fund, and it goes directly to this special fund. I know in the past that's been a mechanism that I didn't think the city could use except with very rare occasions. But so assuming that it goes directly into the special district or downtown space fund, the next sentence in there, I think, and now I don't have it in front of me because you've taken it down, but I think the next sentence said that then those funds have to be used within the census block or the census tract. And I just wanted you to correlate. Is there ever an instance where the parcel that you're granting the payment in lieu of for the public realm would be far removed from where the money could be spent for open space or anything else that's in that list? Like what would be the distance? We don't want to have something where you wouldn't have to comply to have open space or public realm at the parcel, and then they could put it across town because it complies with something that would relate to the census tract. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. So and I know that this is not a dialogue, but that's my comment, and I'm hoping that staff appreciates or understands the question and can answer it for me and for you. Thank you. Staying on for the next one, though.
See you in a bit.
If anyone else would like to speak, please use the raise your hand tool now. Seeing nothing further,
Great. So we will close the public comments. Steve, do you want to address the comments?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll take them in order. The CD3C zone and CD4 zones are not located in East Norwalk at all. That they don't touch or are located there. So the money would go designated into a special fund, not the general fund. So that special fund would hopefully just have a clear, distinct title and purpose that those where the funds are going to. The idea for putting it in census blocks was to try to get that money to stay in the neighborhood. So if you had five projects on Haviland Street in South Norwalk, that those funds would stay in that census block as opposed to being pulled elsewhere. I mean, you could do it the other way if that you felt that was a better use to pool a larger group of funds and put it into just one big fund. That's another possibility. We just thought that doing the segregating the funds in the manner related to the neighborhoods where the fee in lieu was coming from was probably a more fair approach. But however you wanted to do it, doesn't make too much difference to me.
Was there a reason for a census block versus tract? I don't know the distinguishing off the top of my head, but I peeked at the tracts earlier today and I saw that they're pretty split around the areas where, I don't know, it would make sense to me for them to be the area that we use, but I don't know what a census block looks like in comparison to a tract.
I would have to pull the map up to give you
a
answer about that. But I'm not married to any piece of that language, so if you wanted to change it at all, I wouldn't object.
The census block smaller? I mean, I know what a census block is. I don't know what a census tract is, but I would assume the census block is smaller.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Brian, are you able to pull up a map that we can look at just so we can get a sense of whether we should use census block versus tract here?
Yeah, I'll pull up.
Sorry to put you on
Brian,
the
while
spot.
you're doing that, if I may, in the example of the Day Street building that was approved that had that tiny little patch of grass, if they paid a fee in lieu of, then the improvement could have gone or could go into Ryan Park, which was very close by, and that would really make sense, right?
Right.
Otherwise,
that's the idea. Yeah.
Populated area, right? But take, for example, down on Wall Street for Reese Park. So if somebody wants to do a fee in lieu there, that's where those funds should go. And it's predominantly the urban core that would be impacted by this, right?
Yeah, for the most part. And then the other change would be like in the CD3C zone, which is basically Route 1. The reason that we went with the change there was, and that was basically on properties that are under an acre, is because it might not make sense on those smaller strip developments to really have that kind of public space. But when you get into larger developments, maybe there's more of a mixed use aspect, and that might make it more pedestrian friendly and more suitable for allowing those types of uses to occur.
That's sort of what I was thinking. Thanks, Steve.
So this is the census tracts, which is pretty good area.
Yeah.
I believe the blocks are smaller.
Yeah, so I think to Ms. Cece's point, there's inevitably wherever a boundary is drawn, right, there's going to be a property that's on the edge that, could be closer to a different park that maybe would make more sense. And so I don't know that regardless of whether we choose tracts or blocks, if that really changes it that much. But looking at the tracks here, this makes sense to me. But if blocks are smaller, I'm also open to that. I know that's how the language is written today. Does anyone have any strong feelings about tracts versus blocks?
My frantic Googling says that blocks are the smallest for what it's worth.
Okay. Go ahead, Doug. You're muted. Sorry, we can't hear you. Doug, we can't hear you right now.
Keeps doing.
We
Should
have-
I ask any other questions now, or do you want to wait until, are you done with the public hearing?
So we've closed the public comment
Okay, for sure.
part of it.
Okay.
So yeah, we're
Yeah.
talking about tracks versus blocks at the moment, but
Right, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure
Yep.
I didn't
of course,
do this.
yeah.
So I'm going to throw out some concerns, having said on a different side. I said on both in zoning. I'm in favor, if you're going to do a fee in lieu of parking, then it has to either go for developing new parkland
Sorry
or
to
new parking. All right. If you're doing
sorry
a
to
fee,
interject. This is still about the public spaces in parks. Our next one
okay.
will be about
Never mind.
parking.
That's
Sorry,
why I
Doug.
asked. That's why I asked. Sorry. That's why I asked. I thought I was, but I said, okay.
Gotcha. Sorry. Yeah, no, we're still doing the ones on public spaces. But yes, looking forward to diving into parking. Yeah. I mean, given that we have the tracked map, I lean that direction just because that's what we can see. I don't know if, Brian, you're able to find a census block map quickly that we could look at, but
I'd pull up my ArcGIS, but it would probably take 20 minutes to connect through the.
Yeah.
Does anyone have opposition to changing census block to census tract? I know it's a larger by definition, but they seem to be reasonably sized. And given the distribution of our parks that we have, I think in open spaces that we have, I think it provides more flexibility for where those funds can be used in especially in our downtown areas.
Well, would you use both terms? Would that be possible?
I think we need to pick one so it's clear what the funds can be used for, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Are there other questions or discussion on this application?
What's the hospital?
I'm
trying to think that if you use a census block versus a census tract, the hospital would skew one of those.
Yeah, they'd be outside of it since they're
outside of it.
They're in their own zone and then surrounded by separate zones, so they should be.
Okay, I'm just throwing that out there as being something. It could be any commercial building. You know.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there a motion for this application? Harvey, is that a motion to approve?
Move to approve, yeah.
Okay, Galen or Lou, that's a second.
Yeah.
Sure. Great. I'll take Galen because I heard her first. All right. And is that both Galen and Harvey, is that with the modification to have it be a census tract instead of block?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Problem.
Great. Any other discussion or modifications to this resolution? I'll let Brian finish typing and I'll ask again. Sorry. Excellent. Is there any further discussion or modifications to this resolution? All right, just one more time, Harvey and Galen, are you okay with the modifications? That's a thumbs up and a head nod. Great. Okay, great. Oh, go ahead, Luke.
One other correction. Right after it says plan of conservation and development, you should put in a parens POCD so that it's understood below.
Thank you, Lou.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doug.
On the dollar amount, do you want to put anything, CPI on it? Because what happens, a lot of this stuff, you put an amount in, and 5 years later, it's still the same amount.
There is no amount now.
Well,
it was about inflation, right?
That happens a lot. It sits there for years, and then, think about what you're paying for a loaf of bread now than you were 5 years ago.
I mean, I'd maybe ask staff like how much of a burden it would be to continually adjust this and index this thing to CPI as opposed to coming back to us every year to stamp.
Yeah, that's what I'm
4%
talking.
raise.
That's what I'm trying to consider. Just put it in there. It's an automatic, and pick however you want to. However you want to. What system you want to use? Which one is the CPI? You want to use inflation rate or whatever. So.
Steve or Brian, do we have a benchmark that we've used elsewhere for this, or do we generally keep them flat? Oh, Steve, we can't hear you if you're talking.
I'm following the trend. Yeah. No, I'm not aware of anywhere else we've done that. I was thinking about how we would word that in there as you were mentioning it.
Is that worth us taking a look at across our regs and seeing about implementing that like consistently throughout the regs, that it is like
if we just had the zoning fee discussion, for example, and
Sure.
like let's maybe treat it consistently everywhere or nowhere.
Yeah.
How often do you review a fee schedule?
So the zoning fee schedule, there's no set time. The last time was 4 years ago. I'm trying to think of other fees in the regulations. There's the fee in lieu of parking. And that's set well below the space standards. I'm trying to think of where else in the regs we actually have any kind of fee in lieu option that would get looked at on any kind of regular schedule.
We have fee in lieu of affordable housing, don't we?
Yes, that's a really good one. Yes.
Though that's percentage of construction costs.
Yeah, so that kind of takes care of itself.
Right.
Yeah, I think we can look at this later.
Okay.
Yeah, I just throwing it out there.
Thank you. I had flagged that for the next application. Thank you for bringing up for this one. But yes, I agree. Let's maybe handle that separately as an amendment to the overall regulations if we want to enact a CPI.
Because we have another one to get to.
We do indeed. So with that, Brian, do you mind calling the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Schulman?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Lankowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Langalis?
Yes.
Commissioner Hempstead?
Yes.
Commissioner Wells?
Yes.
Commissioner Hubers?
Yes.
And Commissioner Bryce?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right. Thank you. And we will move to our next application and last hearing of the evening, and that is 2026-38, City of Norwalk zoning regulation text amendments to Articles 4 and 9 relating to minimum parking requirements, non-exempt parking area, fee in lieu of parking, and the creation of a definition for a parking needs assessment, public hearing, report, and recommended action. Brian or Steve, are you presenting on this item?
Yes.
I said I'll set the table and Brian can walk you through the specifics of the changes. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I think this is probably the most important point of the evening. The changes we're going to talk about were not changes that were thought about or recommended by staff or the commission or anybody else for that matter. The changes are proposed in response to state legislation. There was a very large housing bill that was passed last year that has a whole slew of impactful changes across the state. There are some that don't come into effect yet, and many that Norwalk is already kind of in line with or exempt from. But there's one big one that we're going to talk about tonight that needs action before July 1. Because if you don't take action by July 1, then you are taking what the state regulations require and put forth. So that's kind of what we're working on. Brian's going to walk you through it, but I'm going to go through the kind of big one, which is the parking exemption area. And that's kind of a misnomer in the sense of the regulations, because you're exempting yourself from the parking exemption. And you get to do that by looking at the total land area of the city. You're allowed to set aside 2 areas of the city. They can abut each other. Neither area can be more than 4% of the land area of the city. And you can exempt yourself from the parking exemptions that the state put forward. And the 2 big exemption pieces that the state put forward are: 1, any development that is 16 units or less no longer has to provide parking. So that means, to Mr. Hempstead's point, if you're building a single family house, you do not have to put parking anymore in. If you're building an 8-unit townhouse development, you do not need to put parking anymore. When you get above 16 units, then you can either provide this parking needs assessment, which Brian's going to walk you through how we're proposing to define that, and the state gives some guidance on that, or you can provide parking at a ratio based on the number of bedrooms within the development. So the big change is, if you have less than 16 units, no parking; above 16 units, parking needs assessment, or this other ratio that the state came up with. So we looked at this, spent a lot of time like, all right, where are the most vulnerable parts of the city, and where do we have problems right now with parking, with street widths, with street access, with emergency vehicle access, with emergency evacuation routes, and being very cognizant of the 2024 rezoning, with the comments that we heard about upzoning, going from 1 family to 2 family, 2 family to multifamily. And we know there are streets in the city that are a lot narrower, that already contain a lot of on-street parking, that there are navigation issues on those streets. So we said, all right, we think we have a good handle on where these vulnerable areas are. So that's where the rationale for the mapping came in. Just to kind of give some background, Brian will walk you through the specifics of the changes, and we can field any questions at any point in time that the commission has.
Right. So the first significant change is going to be to your parking table, which is, as you can see here, all the red text is what's proposed. Again, most of this is in response to the state bill to comply with that legislation. So again, what we've divided the use table up into is for all uses that include dwellings with 16 units or less. The parking is not going to be regulated except for within traffic mitigation districts, which is the non-exempt areas, in which case there are 3 options. They can use the state parking ratio, which is 1 space per studio or 1 bedroom dwelling unit and 2 spaces per 2 or more bedrooms. They can use our existing standard of 1.3 dwelling units, or they can provide their own parking needs assessment and use whatever is less. For dwellings with more than 16 units, similar to above, they could use, there's 3 options. They could do the state parking ratio, they can use our existing parking ratio, or they can provide their own parking needs assessment, and we will use whatever's less. In addition to that, we were thinking that often there's mixed use developments that might have less than 16 dwelling units, and mixed use developments that might have more than 16 dwelling units. If somebody were to come in with a mixed use development that has 10 units and they want to do ground floor commercial, it doesn't really make sense for us to also require that they put in parking for the commercial. So what we're proposing is, in those cases, the commercial parking will not be required. And then in cases where they are doing more than 16 dwelling units in a mixed-use building, or where more than 50% of the floor area is dedicated to non-commercial uses, or they have more than one story of the building dedicated to non-residential uses, then they will use the existing parking standards within the regs, or they will come up with their own parking needs assessment and submit that and use whatever's less. Part of this too is just because there could be an instance where somebody has a large office building, they put in one dwelling unit and then say, oh, I have less than 16 units, I'm exempt from parking, even though the majority of the building is used commercially and not residentially. For our community residences definition, so this is a state statute use, and it says that we cannot treat community residences any different than single-family housing. And because we cannot require parking for single-family housing, we're not going to regulate parking for community residences. Dormitory uses, the one change here is that if there's a dormitory proposed within the Civic District, which is a property that is zoned as Civic District, which means it's owned by the city of Norwalk, we will not regulate the parking. If it's in any other district, it's half a space per dorm room, which is the existing standard. Group home is being deleted because a group home technically is congregate housing, so it's kind of duplicative and not needed. And then just clarification text that if parking is provided, even if we don't require it, it should still comply with all of the other standards that we have. So location, dimensions, all of those kind of things. That way it's probably not needed, but it's clear that if you are putting parking spaces in, we're not telling you that it can go in front of the building. We want to see it at the rear of the property.
Sorry, Brian,
We'll get to
you removed both group home and congregate housing. Don't you want to leave in one or the other?
No, so I think I may have
You may have misspoken. Community residence is the one that's duplicative. Is that right?
I think I misspoke. I think group home and congregate housing are the two that are duplicative, and then community residences are essentially single family homes. So essentially, however it shakes out, the state language is going to say that we cannot require parking for those and for those uses.
For a group home.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, just want to make sure.
No problem. We'll get to the map after this. So we also need to add a definition for a parking needs assessment. So essentially, we're putting in the parameters where if somebody were to submit a parking needs assessment, here's the things that we want them to consider. So a list of 7 items, and then the potential for us to refer it to TMP or a third-party consultant should we have any questions about the study itself. And the last change was regarding fee in lieu of parking. Right now we have a section that with the state language sort of becomes null and void or a little convoluted to implement. So we can only require fee in lieu of parking for developments that have more than 16 units. We can't require it for developments that have less than 16 units. So we're rewording the language to state that. And prior to this, there was the proximity to the train station in which fee in lieu can be considered. We're eliminating the proximity and just proposing that it's within the CD4, CD4W zones, that if you're doing more than 16 units, as part of a parking needs assessment that you submit, you can include in that you are paying a fee in lieu of parking spaces. And then the following language here, 1 through 6, is essentially just some kind of framework on where that money goes.
Yeah, and just to be clear, that language, I believe that is in the current regulations now, so that's not really new. It's just the fee in lieu changes in response to changes that the state made. So we're just making our change based on what the state's telling us we can no longer regulate.
So I'll pull up the map now. So these are the two, again, we're calling them traffic mitigation districts. There's a western one and an eastern one. Both of them are not allowed to exceed, or each of them are not allowed to exceed 4% of the land area of the city of Norwalk. So they are essentially proposed within the CD2 and CD3 zones that surround the CD4. I'll shut off the zoning map so that it's a little bit easier to see. So again, an eastern district essentially stretching from Main Avenue down through East Norwalk, and then a western district stretching essentially from the CD2 and CD3 and South Norwalk up through the hospital area.
And just to reiterate that the two areas that are shown here, these are areas where that are, even if you have less than 16 units, we feel that some parking is important because based on the road geography, the narrowness of the streets, the abundance of on-street parking that's already occurring there, that if someone had the ability to go from, 4 units to 8 units, but not provide the parking on those 4 additional units, then they end up somewhere on the street, and those streets themselves are already at the point where there's stress on them. So we think for safety purposes alone that we recommend going with this approach. And these are neighborhoods, there's more areas of CD2 and CD3 that are not mapped. We couldn't include everything. I don't know, Brian, we at like 7.9% with the 2 zones, something like that. So we're pretty high up, but we think these are, I think, clearly the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. There are other areas of the city that you could point to as well, but keeping in mind that we have to connect these areas, or each area has to be connected, and it's impossible to grab everything. So we think this is just the most logical approach. And keeping in mind that we didn't do this in a vacuum. We did review this with TMP, also reviewed it with the mayor as well before we settled on things, just to make sure that from a policy standpoint, everyone is on the same page.
And within these two areas, the state language requires that even if you do have these traffic mitigation zones, the applicant can still submit a parking needs assessment, and they can use that. So technically, somebody could come in and say, well, I can build 8 units here. Here's my parking needs assessment that says I need 0 parking spaces, and they can use that as their parking standard.
And we do have the ability to reject that if we feel there are, we can just not agree with that analysis, or B, if there are clear health and safety concerns related to that, then we could flag those as well.
And then additionally, we can bring in our own peer reviewer of that traffic report, so that way, or parking needs assessment, so we can understand the validity of the claims in there as well to help us make that decision.
Yeah. And I think something else we didn't talk about, two things I think are important for public edification than anything else. So Brian, can you kind of can you put the CD4 zone up so we could talk about that quick? So the CD4 zone, we were talking about one of the earlier hearings, that's kind of the urban core area. That's Wall Street, West Ave, extending down through South Norwalk by the train station. We purposely did not include that area in the exemption area just because the city already has parking assets there. That's where the city's municipal parking is. Plus, that is where we're seeing the most intense development, and the developments that are occurring there are larger. It is highly unlikely that someone is going to propose a significant development without any parking, because 1, the tenants are going to demand it. 2, financing is going to be very difficult for that. And then we've talked to most of the large developers who do work in the city, and everyone's saying, we cannot just be, for financing reasons, from renting reasons, we cannot just not provide parking. It's not feasible for them. So we didn't include that. We automatically did not consider any single family areas as part of this, because there would be no way to distinguish neighborhood A from neighborhood B. It would just be getting into like a conversation of whose neighborhood is more important versus applying any kind of rational metrics around it. So we think the CD2 and CD3 zones are the zones with the greatest potential for change over time, that already have constraints, who do not have the same infrastructure, and are not located in proximity to the to transit as close by as CD4 zone in other parts. So CD2 and CD3 seem to just make the most sense, and why we're recommending for those as the two zones.
Yeah. Are there any questions for staff on this?
Oh, yeah.
Please go ahead, Doug.
I'm sorry. You're going to regret me. First of all, did the state in its infinite wisdom establish a distance from a dwelling to a shared parking area?
Oh. 16 units or less.
I'm sorry?
16 units or less, no parking was the.
No. But I'm saying, how far away can those 16 units be from public parking somewhere?
No minimum distance.
Yeah.
And that only matters if they're submitting a parking needs assessment, right? Outside.
Yeah, you can consider that, right?
Yeah.
All right. And do you have any kind of survey from, all the new units, Waypoint, et cetera, all those down there, zonal collection of how many vehicles per unit they actually have?
We haven't done that recently. We've done that in the past. I can tell you, so the reason we structured our parking changes the way we did, so the state said parking needs assessment, or for a studio or one bedroom, it's one parking space. For a 2-bedroom, it's 2 spaces. We also left in our current standard of 1.3 spaces per unit, because that's a solid number on the multifamily, especially the bigger multifamily. They tend to park it even less than the 1.3 and have no issue. Depending on where the development is, sometimes they like to have some more parking based on, guest accessibility, but our numbers, I think, are pretty solid.
We also had a bit of a
right?
time period too where we had no parking requirements in the CD4. I think we saw 3 developments essentially get approved. 2 of them already had on-site parking that they were reusing, and then one was a new development that I think had 32 units, and they were proposing to provide 31 parking spaces. So they're almost at 1-to-1.
And one of those, if I recall correctly, just came in front of us recently, adding more parking spaces. Am I remembering that right? Belden?
Yeah, 2 of them. Yeah, Belden and, well, I don't know if it's
what is the out? I'm just gonna pick an area. Go up to Ohio Avenue, that area, which is already jammed pretty much, or even go back to School Street and all that stuff in there, and Catherine Street. If you tore down 3 units and you had enough square footage to build 16 units, and it's some guy who's got money doesn't care, right? He doesn't need bank financing. You can't refuse him to use the entire parcel for 16 units, then, right?
There's some gray language in the statute that if there's I think it's a life or safety risk, that the ZEO has the ability to reject the plan as proposed.
Well, that would be anything, right? Because if you don't have parking spaces on site, then you got to put them on the street or make them walk.
Right, and the question is, does that cause a life or safety risk?
Yeah, a couple other things to keep in mind as part of this is the city is actively working on residential parking permit program, so that will regulate who can park on the street and who can't, or how many cars can park on the street. So that will have an impact on, property A has 2 passes for the street and property B has 3 passes. And so if you know that going in, the developer is not going to have unlimited street parking, that they're going to force themselves to build parking, because otherwise they're going to have a bunch of units that they can't rent. I mean, that's the fact of it.
But you also have existing units that won't need that, am I correct? I'm just trying to think. I used to live in Marvin Beach, right? And I had 3 boys. So at some point I had 5 cars in my driveway. And and nobody's got driveways down there to speak of. So what do they park on the street? So if I'm already pre-existing, right? You're going to allocate each house along the street a certain amount, and that's it?
That I don't know. That the specifics of
Yeah.
how the program are going to be implemented are haven't been kind of ironed out yet, as far as I know.
I'm trying to understand, because when I read the state regs, it's like, what are they thinking? I don't know how that's going to reduce the cost of housing. Yeah. I mean, that's the goal right here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are studies where that does reduce the how expensive it is to build housing, or it reduces one town A requires 2 spaces per unit versus town B requires 1 space. It removes the kind of subjectivity from town to town.
Thank you.
Of course. Are there other questions for staff, either on the proposed language or on the map?
Does proximity to transit factor into the parking needs assessment that an applicant could submit?
Sure.
If we missed that, that would be a good.
Yeah, we had public transportation options that the tenants, customers, employees, and/or residents of the development may use that mitigate the need for off-street parking.
Okay.
And use of
Sorry, I guess I missed that.
Yeah.
Kind
of like. Here, I'll pull it back up for you. Maybe. So 3 and 5.
Okay. Yep, sorry, I missed it. Okay. Can you talk a bit about the selection of the areas immediately around the South Norwalk and East Norwalk for the same reason, the Metro North Railroad stations?
That might be easier. Brian, can you bring the map back up?
Sure. I can find it.
And it's so since this legislation came out, I think I've been to a dozen different seminars put on by different groups. Several of them administered by some of the best land use attorneys in the state, and a lot of them are all of the same mindset that they don't know how this is all going to shake out from a legal standpoint because nothing's been tested. So we don't know if we deny something based on a life safety issue, there are really no parameters around that. So we don't know what the judge is going to say. The other piece of this is once this, assuming it gets adopted by the commission, we have to forward this up to the state Office of Policy and Management to look at it, who sends it on to the Department of Housing for consideration. So technically we could say these are our districts that we want to have some additional oversight on parking, and the state may reject that for some reason or another. So there are still some ifs out there that we don't know, but we think what we've proposed is a logical explanation. So I'll go, I guess, east and go west. So you asked about the 2 train stations, particularly around East Norwalk train station there, and the hatched areas are the areas where we can still at a minimum require a parking needs assessment and more than likely require additional parking. Those line up with the underlying zones on both those areas are the CD2 and CD3 zones, which are the zones that you can do either in the CD2 maximum of 2 units and CD3 maximum of 3 units. And on these properties, you can see like how small the rectangles are. So those generally indicate that those are smaller, tighter sites. Having spent a lot of time on these streets, they tend to be, have a lot of on-street parking. The sites are developed to a pretty high extent now And so any additional development without providing on-street parking there, I think is going to clog things up to a point where it just gets unmanageable. Some of them are difficult to navigate now. Going off to the far right of the map, I remember when we were doing looking at upzoning some of these areas, there was a lot of conversation around those streets because they're super narrow in very in many instances. A lot of those properties don't have driveways that can even hold two cars. They may have a one-car garage, and maybe there's a space in front of the garage. So maybe at most you can fit two cars there. Oftentimes that's not the case. So that's kind of the rationale for a lot of those areas. And I think the same logic would apply when you shift west towards South Norwalk. I think it's, and even more so when you think about some of those neighborhoods south of the train station, Lexington Ave, Ely Ave. I mean, there was just a fire the other day in Ely Ave, and there were reports that the fire department was having trouble getting access on some of those streets based on cars being parked on both sides. Again, a lot of older housing stock where at the time, I'm in the same boat as Mr. Hempstead outlined. I sometimes have my car, my wife's car, my two daughters' cars, a boyfriend and three friends over, and I've got 8 cars in my driveway. That's very easily can be the case in many of these areas. And some of these streets and neighborhoods, they don't have sufficient on-site parking for 2 cars, and you might have parking needed for 4. So that overflows somewhere. So some of these streets, I think by their nature, they're just super tight. Emergency access is already strained. Buses sometimes can't get down there, even on, without cars coming the other direction. So we think these areas are unique in that they're constrained and tight. And we think if you just add more capacity without adding parking on these particular streets, that you're just going to exacerbate a problem and are just going to lead to more congestion down the road.
Well, is there any out on any of this thinking about what you just said? Well, I'm just saying what you said because, I keep in mind that Ohio Avenue, that whole area up there between Main Street and Main Avenue, that, on the be the west side of Main Avenue. You get into the small streets down there, you literally, and there's quite a few where you can't put, it's impossible to put 2 cars. Somebody's got to pull over and wait for another car to come. It depends who gets there first and where's the next opening.
Yeah, that's partly
right there. That's an unsafe. I guess I'm saying, can't you put the state's limiting what percentage you can claim? Is that what you're saying with it?
There is no out on a municipal level. The legislation is what the legislation is. So we're, the city could choose to do nothing and not adopt either of these districts and then just let the chips fall there where they may. We're taking a more proactive approach, thinking that there are areas of the city where we're already at capacity in terms of street impacts, and it's at a point where there are identified needs and concerns based on congestion. So we think this is the best approach to deal with the cards we were dealt. You could lobby to get the legislation changed, but that's...
I'd love to.
Yeah, unfortunately not tonight, though.
That's a little bit beyond the powers of the Norwalk Planning and Zoning Office.
Yeah, enough for the zoning commissions get together and complain. Might work. It's not feasible.
And look, I think from staff's perspective, we've been, we understand, especially structured parking is probably $40,000 a space. It can be $35,000, $40,000 a space. With inflation, it might be more than that right now. So we understand that providing parking is a huge expense in any developments. And we're very pro not requiring much, if any, parking in those, near to the train stations in general. So we get that, but we think each area is unique. Each part of the city is unique. based on the road network and the configurations, each one of those has to get looked at separately and make sure that what we're proposing doesn't have too many unintended negative consequences. So we're trying to mitigate things the best we think.
I understand.
A question on the parking needs assessment. From the language, my understanding is that if a application is something that would be over the counter, it's something that zoning enforcement officer, I think I saw in the language, would be the one adjudicating the parking needs assessments, and if it was satisfactory, or does this mean that parking need assessments that aren't that staff doesn't agree with need to come in front of either us or ZBA? Like, what's the process there?
Yeah,
So-
so probably.
Right, Brad.
I was going to say, if it's a staff level application, so they're proposing 8 units in the CD3, that would not go to you. That would be a staff level application, and they submitted a parking needs assessment with that. That would be staff level decision. If we deny the parking needs assessment, I would assume that that's something that would then be appealed to the ZBA.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't adding like undue burden for just a review of a parking needs assessment for things that are otherwise over the counter.
And that's one of the areas that gets super fuzzy, because if someone appeals the ZEO's decision about, they deny the parking needs assessment and say, no, you need to give us the parking ratio as indicated in the statute, and the applicant disagrees, takes it to the ZBA ZBA upholds the ZEO's decision, then it goes to court. And then I don't know what the court's going to do. There's no test case law on this. So everyone's in the same wait and see approach.
What it looks like. Okay.
On number 2, how many different developers can use that before it's full?
Yeah, I'd assume that.
I'm curious. I mean, it says existing. So if we just say something uptown with the Yankee Doodle garage, has capacity, it always has. But at what point, how many developments, who makes the decision, I guess, that saying we've had 5 different developments use it, there's no really parking left anymore?
Yeah, that would be, I think in that case, we'd refer it to TMP and they'd be able to talk with the parking authority to give us up-to-date numbers on how full Yankee Doodle in that circumstance is.
Yeah. One of the things I noted in the comments, the written comments we received earlier today was a call out about the census data, in reference to the census data about vehicle ownership in Norwalk, or I guess more accurately, vehicle accessibility for folks in Norwalk based on the census tracts, and that's why I had some familiarity with the census tracts earlier today. And I did see that the or near 50% of households, because that's how the census is measuring it, had one or less cars, and I thought that was an interesting statistic. I looked at the census tracts where we had laid out this proposed map, and I noticed it ranged from 40% all the way up to 58%. So looking at the numbers, not actually taking an average of all that, it lands somewhere near 50% of the folks in those areas seem to have one or no vehicles accessible to them. But I also took a look at the other 2 categories that census tracked, census tallied, I guess, to not overly use words here, but which was households that had 2 vehicles, and that ranged from 28% up to 41%. And then the last category they tracked was the 3 cars or more, which ranged from 10% to 21%. And so the 3 cars or more certainly captures quite a large range there, right? But I did think it was notable that in the areas where this map is, there is a decent size of the population, more than I expected, that has 1 or 0 cars available to them. Now, granted, this is data from 2021, so it's a couple of years behind, but I just thought that was notable and appreciated that piece of public comment to be able to go look at that data a little bit. I don't know that it necessarily changes how I'm looking at it, but it is nice data to have And I don't know that I've necessarily formed an opinion based on that one way or the other how to decide on this, but I wanted to share that with the commission as well, that those were some of the numbers that I was looking at for this area, and thought it was an interesting data point at the very least.
Yeah, I think with when you use percentages too, sometimes it's tricky because like for example, like 12% or whatever it was of the units have 3 or more cars, but you know, there's the fewest amount of, you know, those types of units, you know,
Right.
that.
Yep. And it made me wonder if, you know, that's where you're seeing more of the on-street parking issues, is the overflow from those is like making up for the others. I don't know though, like that's just total guess. But yeah, I do recognize, and I appreciate that, you know, both you and Steve have worked with TMP, the mayor's office, and others to, you know, be thoughtful about areas where there is constrained streets, right? And on-street parking that's certainly something we've heard as, you know, quite a theme over the years. And I know that there's work towards a residential parking permit. I don't know where it's at right now or what it might look like, but you know, I recognize that overlaps in some of the areas that this covers. I'm also glad to hear, thank you, Brian, for sharing that the parking needs assessment, you know, could show 0 needed, right? So like depending on the what the applicant's engineer says. On that, actually, who are the types of professionals that would prepare a parking needs assessment? Do you have a sense of like who those would be?
Yes, I think we included that.
Oh, excellent.
Let me make sure. Well, very broadly, qualified professional.
Okay.
I would assume some sort of traffic engineer and or potentially a you know AICP certified planner could probably do the same thing.
Okay. With the term qualified professional, do we need something about who gets to make a judgment on who's qualified in here? Sorry. Do you want to list those two, like by an engineer or?
Yeah, I don't think that's okay. Problematic.
Okay.
Good catch.
Are there other? Oh, go ahead.
I just said good catch.
Yeah. Okay. I'll note that for coming back to.
I guess if we say that you're not qualified, they can appeal that decision to the ZBA as well. And we could argue that one out.
Yep, and set a new precedent. Okay. Are there any other comments, discussions, questions on this before we move to public comment? All right. So we will move to the public comment portion of this application. As shared earlier tonight, there's only one opportunity to speak. While we do not limit how long you speak, we do ask that you are concise. This ensures that your points are clear and others have their time to speak. This portion is not a dialogue, and the applicant or the staff will respond to all comments at the end. We ask that you are polite and that you begin with your full name and address. Brian, can you share how folks can participate in this evening's hearing?
Sure. Anyone who'd like to speak, please use the raise your hand tool. It doesn't look like anyone's dialed in on a phone, but if you were, you'd hit *9. With that, we'll start with Jack Pavia.
Thank you, Mr. Kleppen and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Jack Pavia. I'm at 32 Vanderbilt Avenue. I just want to begin my remarks again, just thanking you all sincerely for your work to put together this draft map and for being here tonight. I'm here to voice my concern with the proposed areas which are exempt from the parking reform enacted in CT Public Act 25-1. I really love Norwalk in large part because of its diversity. We have a lot of different people of a lot of different ages and backgrounds and life experiences. It's really everything a city should be. And I believe that we have that great diversity of people because we have a great diversity of neighborhoods. But as a young person who's lived his entire life thus far in Norwalk, I see that vision threatened as, restrictive parking mandates squeeze out a type of neighborhood that's critical to the progression of people my age into a life of home ownership and community, and that's missing middle neighborhoods. We talk a lot about affordability and livability in today's housing dialogue, particularly the ability to buy into the housing market with prices going up and a lack of starter home supply. People complain about big box rental apartments when they go up, and not everyone wants or can afford, frankly, to live in an area that's entirely dependent on having multiple cars or depreciating assets. So what disappoints me in this draft of areas that are exempt from the elimination of parking minimums is it places unfunded mandates on neighborhoods that are exactly the type that there's consensus that we need more of, while sparing neighborhoods that either don't allow missing middle in the first place or build residential at such a scale that Public Act 25-1, which only waives parking minimums up to 16 units, doesn't apply. The areas exempt from the parking minimums under this draft are neighborhoods that, despite the rise in the average home price in Norwalk, remain relatively affordable to rent and buy. These are neighborhoods where many do own cars, but there's also robust access to no less than 2 train stations, one of which is the busiest in our state and transferred to the Danbury line, and 8 bus lines, at least one of which is just a 5-minute walk away from most of the exempted areas, made easier by an aggressive campaign to expand our network of sidewalks. A few of the bus lines now feature 15-minute service, both the 1 and the 3. They together generate, across all 8 lines, upwards of 6,000 rides on a weekday, and that's up significantly since last year's revamp of bus routes as more people embrace alternatives to driving. What I and many other folks who I'm sure you'll hear from are speaking about tonight is not eliminating parking. It's just right sizing, finding the right balance that allow homeowners and businesses to seek the parking they need without government telling them the form of transportation that they should prefer by mandating space for storing that form of transportation on very valuable land. It's pretty widely understood at this point that people operate in incentives. And so when there's an incentive placed on behalf of cars, people respond in kind. But when we allow for the implementation of additional options and legitimization of those options, that perhaps people will make different decisions over time. It's been a joy to grow alongside this city. So please reconsider exempting these areas so we can take the affordability pressure off of these neighborhoods and build the kind of small scale infill development that allows the city to grow in a way that's community oriented. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have John Levin.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good
Okay,
evening.
great. Good evening, Director Kleppen and Planning and Zoning Commissioners. My name is John Levin. I live at 249 Chestnut Hill Road. My wife and I have been here for 35 years. I intend to be brief. Tonight, I plead with you to look to the future and avoid the mistake of investing in the past. Specifically, unless there is a clear and demonstrated market demand for it, parking for cars is a terrible investment and one which we should not require property developers and residents to invest in if they do not want to. That really is the purpose of the state legislation, and it's a good one. The future of small cities like Norwalk should be clear: a walkable center with public amenities, including public transportation. Ask any 20-year-old who lives in a city now. Owning a car is an expensive nightmare, best avoided if at all possible. The future for our children is emerging now in cities and towns everywhere. Abundant ride-sharing services, self-driving vehicles, electric bikes and scooters, and a cityscape that is pleasurable and convenient to walk in, and, importantly, a reduction in household car ownership. 10 years ago, Norwalk's Planning and Zoning Commissioners approved the last indoor shopping mall to be built in North America. They were promised a major regional draw, very significant property tax revenue, and thousands of new jobs. The developer included nearly 2,000 new parking spaces, convinced that they were needed. Today, the vast majority of the parking at the Sono Collection Mall is never used, and the mall is in bankruptcy, and its property value is a sliver of its nearly $500 million construction cost, and no sane investor would choose to duplicate that mistake. If you feel strongly that Norwalk needs to have a parking mitigation zone anywhere, like the kind that is permitted under Public Act 25-1, then I urge you to designate the Sono Collection Mall for that purpose and not burden the smart future development our city deserves with unwanted and unneeded parking mandates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Paul Fox. I just have to unmute.
Paul, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Paul, check your, click the audio button in your bottom left. We'll come back to Paul. All right, Paul, we'll come back to you. Next, we have Ben Hampeter.
All right. Y'all can hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Okay. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Ben Handpeter. Again, I'm at 14 Haviland Street in South Norwalk. And I'd like to express my opposition to the proposed amendment here. I think the state has done Norwalk a huge favor by passing 8002, which will go a long way towards addressing Connecticut's housing crisis in a structural way. Norwalk has up to this point demonstrated itself as a leader by building new housing of its own volition while our neighboring towns have dragged their heels. And I think that's been very much Norwalk's credit. Now, 8002 has leveled the playing field to a degree by implementing statewide reforms, which is a great thing. So I think it's a major step backwards for Norwalk to act against the spirit of the new law by proposing that certain parts of town have their parking minimums be retained under what appears to me to be zero public pressure. I'm not really clear on why we would propose that basically all of Norwalk CD2 and CD3 zones have their parking minimums retained, when these are exactly the parts of town most suited to the kinds of small development that lifting parking minimums is meant to unlock. There is a valid critique of Norwalk's housing development strategy in recent years, which is that it's been heavily biased towards large developments with dozens or hundreds of units. I think those certainly have their place and are a little overhated, but they should only be part of a balanced housing strategy. We should have more small developments of 5, 10, 15 units and putting them in the CD2 and 3 zones, as well as CD4. But they aren't being built because we've regulated them out of feasibility. And I think that the single largest regulatory issue preventing them from being built are the overly restrictive parking minimums. The state has really done a great thing by removing this barrier for small developments, and Norwalk should take that as a win and not work against the spirit of 8002. To address the inevitable question of where will people park, over 100 cities all over the country, big and small in red states and blue states, and covering more than 14 million people, have completely eliminated their parking minimums over the entirety of their municipality. And the feared parking apocalypse did not materialize. If it did, you can bet that it would be well covered because media outlets know that nothing gets the people going, like parking issues. I think that there were claims made earlier tonight that Norwalk has parts of town that are unique in how narrow the roads are and so forth, but I don't really buy that. Some of the other towns and cities that have banned their parking minimums include Bridgeport, Hartford, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Buffalo, Baltimore, Trenton, all, old East Coast cities with, an urban fabric that predates the car by hundreds of years. Norwalk is really not that special in the grand scheme of things. And if these other cities can do it, so can we. So yeah. Builders still need to include parking in new projects because they recognize that some parking is needed. But what we don't need are arbitrary minimums that require the kind of overdone parking that prevents new housing from ever being built in the first place. So to conclude, I think this amendment should be rejected by the commission because if it is approved, the kinds of small development that Norwalk desperately needs will continue to be infeasible in many cases. To get serious about addressing our housing crisis, we need to reject this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dan Darbandi. Dan, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you. All right, Dan, we will come back to you. Just check your audio input, make sure it's on the right one. Next, we have Diane Keefe.
Hi, my name is Diane Keefe. I live at 249 Chestnut Hill Road. Thank you, commissioners and staff, for staying so late to work on this with us. I'm a member of Sustainable Streets, and I pretty much agree with everything Ben Handpeter just said. Part of why I love Norwalk is its potential to be a more walkable and more safe city for myself, a heavy duty user of an e-bike, and a formerly heavy user of a bicycle, not so much these days. But I do notice that there are more and more people that want to have a safer, slower city center. And the more car dominant our city center is, the less safe it is for everybody who's not driving through it. So I would really much prefer that our staff develop plans for a greener CD2 and 3 that has multifamily developments that are explicitly green, where the developers plan it so that they're attracting people who want to live the kind of lifestyle that I dream Norwalk could have in 10 years. And you know, the irony of this proposed exemption is to suggest that even a dormitory, should the conservatory want to have a dormitory, would have a 1 car minimum per bedroom, would be atrocious. Students have lived for decades without cars. And New Haven has benefited greatly from having an affluent student community. And I would love for Norwalk to get some of that economic development. A few years ago, I met with Jim Himes, and we were brainstorming about economic development in Fairfield County. And he said, you know, part of our problem is our cities are just too small. They don't have the kind of dynamism that larger cities have. So that dynamism comes from cityscapes that are alive and that have more interaction going on them with pedestrians and with cyclists and with e-cyclists. So I just hope that you reject this idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's try Paul again. Paul Fox. He's got, let's see. All right, there's 2 Pauls. Let's try this one.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Here we go.
Can. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kleppen, Mr. Baker, and the members of the commission for staying up so late to work on this. I would also like to object to the parking non-exempt area as proposed. And I am not going to draw this out too long. I submitted a written comment earlier that I would encourage everyone to read. It includes some maps that are instructive. But to make it very short, I'm pretty disappointed by this proposal because it, as several people before me have said, retains parking requirements in some of the best, the best areas for transit-oriented development in Norwalk. I know that there are other mechanisms like the parking needs assessment to deal with this, but for small developments, it is really going to be cost prohibitive in most cases, especially if you're trying to build more affordable townhouses or duplexes or things like other medium density housing like that, to do a parking needs assessment to just build a few units. So I really don't think that you're going to see a lot of uptake on these smaller developments. You really need kind of a clear rule that everyone is allowed to decide. Personally, I don't own a car, so I don't have any need for parking. And I was fortunate enough to be able to purchase a house that is grandfathered in and doesn't have any parking. But I think that more people should have this opportunity. I don't think that anyone should be required to pay for parking that they have no use for, frankly. I think it's a waste of money, and it's a waste of resources, and it's a waste of land. I do understand that there are concerns about the situation with on-street parking. I think that the residential parking program is the proper way to address these. Obviously on-street parking is not an unlimited resource either. And it is a problem if people are parking in areas that obstruct emergency vehicles or obstruct buses or regular traffic. But I don't think that mandating more off-street parking is necessarily going to fix that problem either. People park where it's most convenient to park, and if there are no restrictions on parking on the street, people will park on the street if it's more convenient. I have done some visualizations. Obviously, I can't show them to you here, but they're in my written comments, and you can see that about half of this zone, half of the proposed zone to retain parking exemption or to retain parking requirements, is within a 5-minute walk of a bus route that gets 15 to 30-minute bus service 7 days a week. This is some of the best transit access that Norwalk has ever had. We really should be encouraging people to build transit-oriented development in these areas. So I think that this, I would encourage the commission to go back to the drawing board on this, to not retain parking requirements in areas that already have excellent access to transit, because in those areas, not everyone is going to need a car, and not everyone is going to bring a car. I'm an example. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, you have Thomas Blith. Sorry for any mispronunciations.
Hi there, I'm Thomas Blythe. I live at 94 East Avenue. I'm inside of the proposed parking or traffic mitigation zone. I've got to say, listening to this meeting and some of the prior meetings discussing this plan, while I can appreciate that I'm sure a lot of stakeholder alignment inside of City Hall went into making sure that everyone was happy with this plan and everyone hoped that it would fly politically. I really can't agree with the assessment that this is a terribly detailed or nuanced plan. In addition to the points that some people that have already spoken have made about transit and other things, you also just kind of look at the map and you're like, oh, we're just following the zone borders, right? I appreciate that we needed to meet the deadline of July 1st, or we feel like we needed to. But the fact remains that over 10% of Norwalk households have no car, almost 50% have one car or less, and those residents are concentrated in many of these relatively affordable neighborhoods that have been specified in these zones. We're talking about Spring Hill and Hospital Hill. We're talking about Flax Hill. And so, this really just aren't appropriate locations. And furthermore, a lot of the city parking facilities, few of them often exceed 50 to 60% full, right? You've got the train station, you've got a couple of the lots right around Washington Street, and that's about it. So I also want to say the city doesn't have to do this at all. They can allow the whole city to go without parking mandates if they want to, right? The state doesn't require us to set out these zones. It allows us to. And developers still build parking even when they're not mandated to, usually greater than 70% of what was previously required, right? Because these are people out to make money and they know that they can lease their units better for higher if they have parking. I'm pretty disappointed in the map and the amendment. The parking apocalypse that we're worried about really just doesn't ever come when people are so concerned about it. I mean, you get rough times during special events and in tourist towns, but Norwalk's not Newport, right? In terms of safety, tight maneuvering on some of these streets means that people actually have to drive slowly. And speed when you're driving is the number one predictor of how severe the injuries in a crash are going to be. It does nothing to the setbacks that are designed to prevent fires from spreading between buildings. And so, in terms of getting through dense city streets, the fire department can and should invest in buying appropriate equipment for a dense city, a historic city like Norwalk. Instead of trucks the size of a semi-truck, smaller, more appropriate equipment does exist. It's cheaper, and that really should be the response in terms of safety. We're also kind of explicitly going after the ideal locations for the statute and the intended effect of the statute. Small lots are really exactly where the state bill could make the most possible impact. These are the places where, mom and pop builders or an owner that happens to own the lot next door, might decide to put up some more housing. These are people that are probably going to be operating on thin margins, and they may decide not to do a project at all, or they may decide that a relatively affordable project now has to become luxury, relative luxury units, if they have to pay the, $20,000 a space that parking requires. And a parking needs assessment, while I appreciate the attempt at like a mitigation measure here, that's an additional point of complexity and cost that these builders are going to have to factor in. And, depending on if this is just a resident, they may just throw up their hand and say, you know what, I can't deal with this. So, all of that's to say that, like, you're adding costs, you're adding uncertainty into projects. Interestingly, also, with townhomes specifically, under the current requirements, you're only required to have one parking space per unit. This would increase that to 1.3, which also is going to further restrict the affordable ownership units that we desperately need in town. Parking has impacts to runoff, impervious surfaces, etc., in these denser neighborhoods. And really, I just have to say that, like, if we're directing resources to something, instead of directing private spending to parking that is going to decimate local businesses' customer base, make those customers walk to local businesses unpleasant, and instead force them into the big box stores on Connecticut Ave and Westport Ave, maybe instead we should be investing in our neighborhoods and, like, directing resources to small businesses, neighborhood groceries, et cetera, that we have all over town. I know that's a little bit outside of the scope of this commission, but, like, we got to talk about what's a useful use of resources here. A lot of people have already mentioned transit as well. As Paul said, most of the areas on this map are within a 5-minute walk of the 1, 2, or 3. Those are our core bus routes that operate 7 days a week, either at 15 or 30-minute frequencies. When you add in the other routes, especially the 4, 5, and 6, this map is practically just a map of the 5-minute walk scheduled for NTD. On top of that, significant parts of the map are within a 5-minute walk of a train station, like Chestnut Street and much of the areas around East Norwalk Station. Frankly, all told, as I look at this map, it's about as good a map of the worst places to keep parking requirements as you could draw. And I'm sorry to say that I think that. The residential parking program, which the city has been talking about for a long time, is really the proper fix to a lot of the concerns here. Despite the concerns in City Hall, parking apocalypse is just not going to happen. It never does. And even if it did, maybe we'd light a fire under the city to actually get the residential parking program in place, which we need to do desperately. So, my preference, of course, would be that the commission, reject this entirely. But, I understand that there's probably a political middle ground that's going to have to be found here. But at a bare minimum, I think that the commission needs to wait to act on this until the city has the time to, go through and create a map that well considers the presence of transit and all of these other factors in terms of where to put these zones. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kenneth.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
All right, my name is Kenneth Aviles of 18 Avenue B. I am here tonight to voice my objection to the non-parking exempt parking area that is being set by the state law. As someone who has called Norwalk home for practically my whole life, I've witnessed much change in my neighborhood as well as throughout the city, and I've enjoyed the changes. From the recently implemented sidewalks in my neighborhood connecting me to other places on foot more safely to the improvements of neighborhoods like recently with Stevens Street in Hospital Hill, and more than a decade ago, close to home on Cedar Street and Golden Hill. These developments have brought in so much life into what were otherwise isolated neighborhoods. As I've gotten older, I've seen many of my neighbors leave for the reasons being downsizing or unable to afford living in Norwalk. And as I enter the workforce, I've known that in due time I would need to move on my own or find a larger place for my family. Well, the rent now so unaffordable and the supply short, I would have no choice but move out of Norwalk, the place I've called home for almost my entire life, and that would hurt me leaving a chunk of my life behind. Now, with that being said, I believe that most of the areas, if not all, that are being given non-exemption status would be good places for smaller sized homes that can be starter homes for people like me and places for retirees who want to move into a smaller home and retain their independence. These same areas are also located around our bus routes that have pretty good headways, giving people a chance to save some money on gas and to get to where they need to go. These areas are currently home to local businesses such as La Sorpresa, Blue Cactus Grill, and Speedodona, which I and many have walked to enjoy a good meal, as well as the America's Laundry, the Family Market, and Cedar General Stores that have provided essentials to my neighborhood to fill our needs. All of these small businesses would benefit more without the need of parking minimums, in the addition of missing middle housing with more foot traffic. Furthermore, there are some smaller plots of land around these areas that are around 200, 300 square feet, would benefit from having no parking minimums and stay consistent with the neighborhood. If you were to build on these plots of land right now with 2 to 4 housing units, you would need 5 or 6 parking spaces, but there wouldn't be enough room for either the homes or the parking. And as a result, you leave these plots of land empty, which can become illegal dumping grounds or places for shady businesses to be conducted. I understand that some people need a car and need a place to put them. My family only owns 1 car, and we are fine that way. I'm sure there will be others who could or can live with just 1 large car, given the chance, but I also know that we can't also just build homes everywhere with no parking. But the places that have been chosen may hinder or discourage further development of smaller homes to give people just like me or like anyone else a chance to continue living or start living in Norwalk. I hope you all will reconsider where you are enacting these non-parking exemptions and provide an even more common sense approach that would encourage development of missing middle housing in places that are needed, with an encouragement on transit-oriented development, provide options to those who want and need them, which would reduce the dependency of taking a car for just a mile drive, especially with these high gas prices. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, let's try going back to Dan Darbondi again.
Yes, good evening, Commission. Can you all hear me that now?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Excellent. I'm so sorry about that tech glitch earlier, but I do appreciate you letting me speak, and I appreciate the care and time you've put into running this late in the evening tonight. So kudos for that. But with that being said, I would like to object to the amendment being proposed here tonight. As we know, land isn't infinite, and giving over more of a limited resource to a mode of transit that overall lowers our quality of life isn't optimal. And I don't want to concede that people will demand parking. I personally own a car, and I would like less reasons to drive it within the city, given the current issues we have with congestion, reckless drivers, the growing size of motor vehicles, and, especially over the past several months, volatility in fuel prices. Additionally, and there's been mention, throughout the night of narrow roads, and how that factors into, what's being put forth here. But I would argue narrow roads in our city seem to be an argument for encouraging pedestrian and cyclist-friendly development, not finding ways to squeeze ever-expanding vehicles into them. I just want to close by saying the area proposed tonight includes the prime areas of Norwalk for sustainable, affordable development. And on the note of affordability, one way we can actually help alleviate cost of living burdens on folks is by not building environments that require expensive appliances to exist in. So please, I ask the commission tonight to reject the amendment, and to do your part to ensure we can continue to develop a Norwalk that can succeed without over-reliance on motor vehicles. Thank you so much. Again, deep appreciation for you going late into the night tonight and for letting me speak. Oh, and by the way, my name is Dan Darbandy, 20 Ambler Drive here in Norwalk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Tanner Thompson.
Hi there. I'm Tanner Thompson. I live at 16 Hillside Place, number K5, which is in the CD3 zone and just across the border from one of the proposed exclusion zones. I want to comment on a few of the points made. First of all, the idea behind parking reform is not to eliminate parking entirely. As other people have pointed out, developers have a profit motive. They know that they, in most cases, will need to provide some amount of parking in order to build a unit that's competitive on the market. What it does do, removing parking reform, which I'm going to refer to, removing parking minimums, which I'm going to refer to as parking reform, means that small-scale developers, the kind that a lot of people in Norwalk have been speaking out that they want more of, as opposed to the large, 5/1 developments that we see a lot of near the train station. In order for those small-scale developments built by small-scale developers to happen, those developers need the flexibility to add the amount of parking that makes sense for the context. And context can change a lot from street to street and even from lot to lot. In particular, Kenneth was just mentioning these really small lots that, even if you did a parking study, a parking needs assessment, you might find that like most people who live in that neighborhood do have a car, but if there's a tiny lot that isn't going to pencil out without removing parking entirely, then maybe a developer can build that, and one of the 10% of Norwalk households that doesn't have a car could be living there, and that's one more unit of housing that we're able to add to Norwalk in a walkable area. As other people pointed out, the zone that has been outlined is among some of the most walkable neighborhoods in Norwalk. I want to underscore a point that Thomas made. The impact of removing parking minimums is, I guess this is kind of what I just said, but to put a fine point on it, the impact of removing parking minimums is not usually the projects that were going to get built with less parking, but rather that projects that would not have otherwise gotten built will now pencil out because there's more flexibility. I want to point to a specific example here in Norwalk that we actually pointed to. I and some other people, some of whom have spoken tonight, sent in a memo about parking minimums and parking reform 2.5 years ago when the city rewrote the zoning code. And I'm going to pull an anecdote that I actually added to that memo, and that is about the lot at 64 South Main. I'll just read directly. There was a redevelopment at 64 South Main proposed by the Clark family and brought before the Zoning Commission in 2019. In the meeting, then Vice Chair Lou Schulman, Commissioner Schulman is still here. Thank you for being here, Commissioner Schulman. Inquired as to why the project situated in the transit-oriented Sono Station Design District didn't include more housing density. The simple answer was parking. Any more housing units than those proposed would require the development to include a parking structure, which, according to a representative from the Clark family, would double the project's cost. Fast forward to today, and this was written in 2023. After a COVID-era rise in construction costs, 64 South Main does not have 26 units of housing. It has none. Instead, it has the same large gated surface parking lot that it had 4 years ago. Fast forward 2.5 more years, and that lot still looks the same as it did 2.5 years ago, and it looks the same as it did in 2019 when that discussion was had. The point here is that there's very real evidence that imposing arbitrary parking requirements on small lots in urban and walkable neighborhoods really does have an impact on how much housing gets built and which projects pencil out. To the point about cars parked on the street, there are a lot of cars parked on the street, and I agree with a lot of the people who are pointing out that that feels like it is kind of at a breaking point. But I would submit, similarly to other people tonight, that is not a zoning issue as much as it is a parking enforcement issue. And the residential parking program that is being worked on, that TMP is working on, is the appropriate policy recourse to that. Having a zoning recourse to that will drive up the cost of housing, and it will subsidize artificially the ownership of an automobile, which is something that we shouldn't be subsidizing in these parts of town. The residential parking permit, on the other hand, would regulate what we actually want to regulate, which is the cars parked on the street. Certainly, if there's cars parked on the sidewalk, those cars should be dealt with and should not be allowed to park there. Moving on, I want to remark on the anecdote about having 5 cars in a household. As the data that has been pointed to a couple of times, including by Chairman Bryce, points out, that is a very small minority, and I think it's largely a thing of the past. I moved to Norwalk 8 years ago, and even in those 8 years, housing, cars, and gasoline have all gotten markedly more expensive than when I moved in here. It's not really feasible for many households in Norwalk to have 5 cars. At that point, having 5 cars is a luxury good in most parts of Norwalk. To close, the area that's been outlined by the proposed zone is in large part right where the city has been investing in the exact infrastructure that will allow people to get by comfortably with fewer cars. New sidewalks, bike lanes, the increased bus service that people have alluded to. I want to give one particular example that's right near my house. I live near the intersection of Hillside and Taylor, near to Flax Hill Road, and there's a crosswalk going in, brand new crosswalk that I have been asking for years. It's finally going in across Flax Hill Road, right there at Taylor, and it's going to include a pedestrian refuge island that will allow people to cross the street safely. The city is making real investments to allow people to get around in more flexible ways that don't always include driving. And the more we do that, the more it will make sense for people to live with fewer cars than they did before. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your attention to everybody's comment tonight. And I'll close with that.
Thank you.
Next, we have Becca. Becca, you just have to unmute. While we're waiting, if anyone else would like to speak, please.
I'm here.
There you go.
Oh, good. Good evening.
Thank you all for sticking around to listen to the people of Norwalk. My name is Becca Stoll. I live at 26 Emerson Street, so right in the heart of Eno, walking distance to the train station. My husband and I live car light. We share one EV between us. I make minimal use of it. My favorite way to get around town is on my e-scooter. I'm also a frequent user of the bus and rail. All that to say that I particularly want to speak in opposition to the amendment as proposed on behalf of the TOD in Eno, where more parking will just incentivize the kind of congestion that every group, whether it be homeowners, renters, etc., is against. If you give people parking, they will park in it, and we will just be more crowded than we already are with the construction, with beach activity on the weekends. We need to be encouraging people to get around our town in alternative means. They need to park their personal car somewhere like the Sono Collection, where there's plenty of parking, and finish their journey by shuttle, bus, rail, bike, walking, or some combination of those. I don't think we should be giving people more incentives to drive in neighborhoods where they could be walking. I think we should be, that it is the job of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as stated in your mission statement, to guide growth and development in the city, and forcing parking minimums will stagnate growth for reasons that my friends have listed. It will make development cost more. It will push rents up. It will burden residents with the added expense of exorbitant rent or mortgage, plus parking, which a landlord could then charge for, plus fuel, which, unless you're like me with my EV and the TTD, is pretty expensive right now, and will overall be a hindrance to affordability. In addition, more parking means more curb cuts, which would also drive up the cost of development and make the sidewalks more dangerous for pedestrians. I think that to combat the housing crisis, we should be letting the free market do its thing, because as we've also mentioned, developers are going to build the amount of parking that the market will bear, and we shouldn't be forcing them to meet an arbitrary minimum. There is not a parking apocalypse. There is a housing apocalypse, and it is the job of this commission to work on solving that here in Norwalk. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anyone else would like to speak, please use the raise your hand tool. Diane Cece.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Diane Cece, still on Olmsted Place, and speaking on behalf of East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. First of all, thank you for holding this and continuing late. My preference would have been that this topic being so important and potential impact on our communities, that this hearing would have been continued to another meeting. I understand there's some concern about a July 1st deadline, but I'm sure that there are acceptance to that since you are in progress of examining this. And I think it's unfortunate on a late night now that deliberations and possibly you're going to vote on this. I would rather have you continued it. Also, I took the opportunity to listen to all the prior speakers, which if most of you who know me know that I like to do that so that I hear a lot of perspectives before I finalize what I'd like to say. And I would have liked to have had some time to modify that too, maybe another night. I think it's also the night of the Brian McMahon High School graduation. And in addition to that, your meeting started 2 hours later than normal. So in any event, I am in favor of, but let me first say this. If what people are saying, what the state is saying, and I think even in Attorney Suchi's published piece on this topic recently, that and I'll quote, the driving force behind the legislation was an effort to lower housing costs. If that were the case, many people who would be, opposed to having the parking limits would have a different attitude. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't lower housing costs for people who are looking to rent or have a home. It lowers the cost for the developers. And if there was some mechanism where the equation of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that get estimated for parking spaces then got transferred over to be savings in terms of rent, that would be one thing, but that doesn't happen. So the fact that you would be taking out parking and they'd be saving, I think Mr. Kleppen said in some cases it could be upwards of $40,000 a space is what the estimates are. Those savings do not get passed along in an effort to create affordable housing. And so this misconception that somehow all of these regulations are going to result in affordable housing is insane. It may increase housing, but we haven't seen anything that's increasing really what is affordable housing. And I'm not even going to go down the semantics of workforce housing and what that means in this community. We don't have affordable housing here. And nothing in the mechanisms that the state is shoving at us is creating affordable housing. What could happen here without these mitigation zones and the fact that the rest of the city isn't subject to it, and now you're creating housing that is going to be for people who can afford. Now you can have an affluent, young, healthy community that can afford Uber, that can afford trains, that can afford not to have a car where they can get around town. You're blocking out possibly the elderly, the mobility challenged, who may not, have a handicap requirement, parents with young children in strollers, and even people who would use the bus and the train. If you're talking about a bus route, you may still have to walk blocks and blocks to actually get to where the bus stops. And you're talking about snow, you're talking about inclement weather, you may be talking about with trains and things, it could be late at night, there could be a safety factor. So, that's one thing to take into account. And I think it's disingenuous of a lot of people to say this is something that's going to block then the creation of affordable housing. I just don't buy into that. My real concern with this is, and another point I want to make, when the state was putting this legislation together, there is a reason why they included in the legislation the opportunity for you to designate the traffic mitigation zones. I'm not sure how they came up with the 8%. I don't really want to get into that. But because they built this mechanism in for you to use, even the state recognized that there are going to be instances in communities where it didn't make sense to just have this one size fits all. But even if you take into account the traffic mitigation zones that I do agree with, I think there may be some minor tweaking that's needed. The fact remains is that all of that really gets washed away anyway through either the parking assessment study, the parking needs assessment, or any denial then is going to go to appeal based on that. And for example, I'm not able to share my screen, but I wonder if Brian Baker could put up the parking needs assessment part of the amendment again. And because I want the commissioners to see what I'm speaking to there on that. If you take a look at the things that are considered in the parking needs assessment, a lot of those things just inherently in East Norwalk, because we are TOD, are the ones that they're automatically going to apply for and probably qualify for, like the public transportation and busing, transit on demand. I think we're soon going to have car sharing facilities over here, et cetera. And so when you look at the 7 conditions, these are the types of things that are going to be assessed, and then they're going to be approved. And if they're not approved, and you can actually take that down now, Brian, thank you. If they're not approved and they get denied, I really can tell you, I don't have any doubt in my mind that they're going to appeal. And then that's going to be a lengthy process. There's going to be reviews of other developments where similar considerations were taken into account to reduce parking. And they're going to cite those as cases where, you can't discriminate against one project over another one. So in the end, this parking needs assessment really is going to stands to negate much of what would protect the community and what the state allowed you to do anyway to try to do that with traffic mitigation. For all of the reasons that you're talking about with emergency vehicles, people having to not have parking and having to walk for blocks to get to their home. Another resident recently brought up the same parking issue with the 5th Street road improvement project, where what's going to happen is the cars aren't going to go away, just the spaces are going to go away. And now you're pitting neighbor against neighbor in this effort to find parking wherever they can. And that's not a healthy environment for people either. So the concern there with the, if I could see that parking needs assessment thing go away, I would rather that go away, because I think the regulations should just be what they are. Especially since I don't think any of these things are going to be coming into us under special permit. So the protections that our communities have to protect our quality of life have already been diminished, because so much of this now is site plan review. We don't even have the benefit of special permits where we know what's going on. There's public notices, there's public hearings. And then they come in with a needs assessment, and we don't know that either. One of the things that I'm suggesting here, you have terminology in there. I don't think you need to bring this up again, Brian. The terminology now reads that you may refer the parking needs assessment that's filed to TMP, the Traffic, Mobility, and Parking, and or to a third party, a peer review. I would feel better if you require that it shall be referred to TMP, because they ultimately are the ones who have all the data and the experience and everything with the traffic, mobility, and parking, and also the purview of the Norwalk Parking Authority, and require that you do a referral over to them the same way you refer to other agencies, and then have that come back to you. And then I would go further to say, if PMP does an assessment of it, then it would be under their authority then to recommend to you that you then do a third-party review, peer review, if that's necessary. But at the very least, I think that the shall should come out. I mean, the may should come out, and you should put in shall be referred to TMP. If for nothing else, just for, a review that they come back to you with comment on. Hang on one second. Made some other notes here while folks were talking. The thing that I started with at the beginning too, that's questioning whether or not any of this is actually going to result in affordable housing stock being built. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that this is one of the components that would encourage more affordable housing being built. One of the things that we don't want to do is solve one problem, the affordable housing problem, by creating another one. And the other one creating a real quality of life issue, a safety issue, a convenience issue, etc., in the whole rest of the community, especially since we know that TOD neighborhoods are being very heavily targeted by the state of Connecticut in terms of development. So we can only look for that to continue. And East Norwalk, we often say that we were both blessed and cursed because we have the highway, the bus, and the train station. So for many people, that's a great amenity, but for some of us, we feel like we're almost being punished for it. So I don't think that, anything that the state's doing for affordable housing then should create another problem for our community. And that's why I agree with these mitigation efforts for, all the reasons that you guys said as well. But again, if I don't know if you're going to hold this open for more comment based on what you heard tonight or any clarifications. But if you are going to vote tonight, I hope that you strongly consider these comments, and that if there's no way to be able to have anything come in with a parking needs assessment and have that reviewed more as a special permit than just a regular application. And if you would at least change the shall to may, and at least get another review within the city departments with TMP, that would help there. I'm sure I had more than that, but hang on one second. The other point I think I made is that any rejection is likely to result in an appeal to begin with, and I think that's something that we don't want to create a situation for. And if we can guard against that with more review and eyes on it, I think that would be a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last call for any speakers. If anyone else would like to speak or hasn't spoken, please use the raise your hand tool. Seeing none.
All right, we will close the public comment. I would like to say thank you to everyone who stayed along with us in order to make comments this evening. It was much appreciated for your feedback on this application. With that, I'll turn it to Steve and Brian for responses to the public comment.
Sure, and I'll leave it up to you, Mr. Chairman. If you want to, since you've closed the public comment, you can conclude the entire proceeding for the night and vote on it at your next meeting, which is next Wednesday. If you want to wrap it for the night, I'll throw that out there for consideration.
So I see that Galen is in support of that. Can we do a quick straw poll to get a sense of are people in support of continuing this to our next meeting? I don't remember the exact date, but
it's the 24th.
24th. Okay. We have 2 folks. All right, so we'll move forward this evening, given that, and see where we get tonight. I'm sorry, Galen. Steve, do you mind replying to the comments that came up this evening? Maybe we'll see afterwards if people feel differently. But go ahead, Steve. I'll give it to you.
Sure, and feel free to fire away with any questions. I would say, and I don't disagree with the sentiment of most of the speakers. However, I don't think it all necessarily lines up with reality. Brian and I and everybody on my staff meets with people, developers, property owners on a daily basis on all scale and size of project. I think there's a significant difference, though, between what you can do in a downtown urban area, specifically the CD4 zone and any of these surrounding zones. And the big difference is that when you're talking about those spots, especially when you're talking about, we heard at your last meeting about some potential changes on Wall Street, and we have these historic properties and these very old properties that have no parking and these tiny lots, and where it is completely understandable that providing parking is very difficult. More importantly, providing parking at a ratio commensurate with what the density of that zone allows. So, for example, the CD4 zone allows one dwelling unit for every 500 square feet of lot area, but the CD3 zone is one unit for every, I think, 1650 of lot area. So that's almost a fourfold difference there. So it's much easier to provide parking for 2 units or 3 units on a site than it is for a lot that could support 10 units per density, but can only park 3 or 4 because of the parking ratios required in the regulations. There may be a case where you have an existing single family house in the CD2 zone that wants to go to a 2-family house where locating that the additional parking spaces required is going to be difficult. That very well may be the case. However, I've not seen that on new construction. I don't think that's applicable. I think that's workable. Also, there's no requirement in the zoning regulations that somebody has to put asphalt down and put asphalt parking spaces, and they can do pervious asphalt. They can do what's called grassfalt or different kinds of pavers. They could do gravel. So there's other ways to do it. So you don't. There's also other items in the zoning regulations that regulate the amount of development on a property. We look at impervious surface coverage. We look at total building coverage. So those are also limiting factors. So the driveway or the parking area is not going to impact those other factors. You're still limited on how big the building can be, regardless of whether you put the parking on it. So I don't think that saying somebody has to pave a couple spots is going to prohibit them from doing any of the development. It's possible that they may not physically be able to locate any more parking spaces. I can think of everyone in East Norwalk's favorite example, One Cemetery Street that was built. They could not physically locate any more parking spaces. That, at least what they said in terms of a layout, they maximized that, and that equated to the density that they built. I think it was 77 units, I think is what they built, and they left some density on the table. So parking was a limiting factor to the overall density on that, but you still got a pretty dense development. So I think sentiment wise, I understand and agree. And also, should you go forward with this recommendation, it doesn't prohibit you from changing it in the future. You can go back and look at this 6 months from now, a year from now, reduce either area. The thing is, if you don't do something now, this is what the state's saying you're going to do. And I never like that approach. I always like having options and ability to be flexible down the road. So I think I don't have any further comments. Like I said, I agree with the sentiment, but I don't necessarily know that it's that limiting of a factor in these areas. I think some of the examples they pointed out were in the CD4 zone, so they would be exempt anyway, for the most part. And the parking needs assessment is something we will evaluate on a project by project basis based on those 7 criteria that are outlined.
I just
One thing
also
go ahead,
sorry,
please.
sorry, Chief. Just to dispute some other comments made, mostly by Ms. Cece, is that we do know that costs when they build parking, those do get passed down to the residents. When these developers put pro formas together, they know how much it costs to build a parking space, and then they know how much they have to raise the rent in order to make up for that cost. There are studies out there that show that when you don't provide parking, it reduces rent by up to $200 a month. A lot of the times when the parking numbers don't work, it does prevent units from getting built. When you don't build new units, either your old units get more expensive, or a project just goes from what could have been 6 units down to 5 units. Now you've lost a legitimate housing unit just for the sake of parking. And it's a legitimate housing strategy that new housing is going to be more expensive than old housing, but if you never let that new housing get built and become old, then it never becomes affordable. And then just the fact of not having a car makes things more affordable. I know I pay $350 a month for my car, which is probably pretty affordable for some folks. Then I have car insurance on top of that. That's another $150 a month. Then I have gas that I have to pay for on top of that. Then I have to upkeep my car. That's all savings that can go away if I didn't have a car. So just to dispute some of those, that this would not make any housing affordable.
If I could layer on one more example, something that the commission saw, I believe in the past year and change, maybe past 2 years, was the Meadow Gardens project, where they had to reduce the number of units that they had because of the parking minimums that were required there. And that's one that certainly has resonated with me, as it obviously comes to mind tonight. Regardless of where we go with this application, I would pose to the commission that I think we need to approve some form of this, at least so we can get the parking needs assessment and fee in lieu definitions and language together. Whether or not we evaluate the zones, that's, I think, a separate conversation, but I would caution that we should have a definition on the books of what the parking need assessment looks like, as well as the fee in lieu parking, as regardless of whether or not we implement these traffic management districts, we need definitions of what those look like in our municipality. Steve, Brian, keep me honest if those aren't required, but I think that we really need those at bare minimum. So I would hope nobody would make a motion to deny, but we can talk about that, obviously.
Yeah. One thing I think on the Meadow Gardens, I think the other point, though, that I think they said they needed each and every one of those spaces too. I think the parking was a limiting factor, but they did need the parking because they were utilized.
I don't remember that, but interesting. I might have missed that as it is from a few years ago. Doug, I see you've got your hand up for a little bit. You're muted though, so I can't hear you.
I should have had my swearing in next week, not this week.
Happy to have you on.
Boy, you talk about conflicted, because I just don't like any of these regulations, period. And I was about to vote no, but now I'm convinced I got to vote yes, because it's better to do something than nothing. I do take some exception when we talk about other cities. Norwalk does not have, as in Bridgeport and New Haven, wide boulevards. Our widest street's probably West Avenue, and everything's pretty narrow after that. And when I hear this, staff, Mr. Klepper, somebody, can you find out how many non-commercial vehicles we have registered in the city of Norwalk? I really like to know. Megan, that's the tax assessor's office.
Yeah, I think we can get that, I think.
Yeah, because I go by these elementary schools every day, or sometimes, and I don't know, they have kids taking a bus, but I don't think anybody walks from school anymore. So for people who say they don't have any cars and that, I don't think they have kids in the school system either, because I'm sorry, I just expressed my. So I will be supporting this reluctantly, because I don't like any of the regulations the state's forced down our throats. But I got the news that it was better to do something than nothing. That's all. Sorry.
Thank you, Doug. Harvey, did you have something before? Oh, and then Lou. Okay, go ahead, Lou.
I'd like to move approval of the resolution.
Okay. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, Doug is seconded. Brian, do you mind bringing up the resolution?
Lou, is the approval for the approval of the resolution, or the resolution and the map?
I thought the map, I assume the map was part of the resolution.
Right, they're one and the same. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and we should treat them as one as we make this decision. Yep. Is there any discussion or modification to the resolution? Okay. Hearing none. Brian, can you call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner, error messages. Commissioner Lankowski. You're muted, Diane.
I
Can
think
you
you're
give us-
still muted.
Can you give us a thumbs up or thumbs down for a yes or no? It's blurred.
Sorry, can't see that.
That's a yes. Okay.
Commissioner Hubers.
Yes.
Commissioner Schulman.
Yes. And just a brief statement that I liked what the people had to say. But I think that they're describing a world that we're not at. I think what the staff is recommending at this place and this time makes sense.
Commissioner Wilson.
I'm gonna abstain on this one.
Okay. Can you share why you're abstaining?
I see it both sides in both ways, and so that's how I feel.
Okay.
Commissioner Langallis.
I want to say I appreciate the people that spoke this evening. They make some good points, but having lived here for a long time, and I just think the reality of it is we're not so densely populated in any part of the city that we can think that people are going to give up their cars. So I like some of their thoughts, but I think that I'm going to vote to approve this.
Commissioner Wells.
I am really deeply conflicted over this. I was persuaded by much of what I heard tonight. Also, I remember way back when I was in law school, which was a long time ago, a professor was saying, and it was true then and it's true now, that if you didn't own a car, you could afford to take a taxi back then wherever you wanted to go, by the depreciation of the car. And as Brian points out, the taxes, the insurance, the upkeep, the gasoline mounts up to more per year than it would cost you to Uber wherever you needed to go. I think where people live within a few blocks of public transit, more people will start not to have cars. I also think we should have more faith in the market, that the market will regulate much of this. If there's a development the size where they need parking in order to finance it and in order to sell or rent the units, they'll put parking in. Where that's not the case, then people won't put parking in. I don't know. It's very. I guess I'm going to vote no. Actually.
Commissioner Jones.
Yeah, I really respect the work that you all put into this. I would say that for some of the affordability reasons that you cited, even though you know weighted them ultimately a little less in your assessment, I think I would weight them more. I think we're looking at a number of areas which are closest to one of the busiest commuter rail lines in the country, and mandating that land like directly next to those stations be used for cars is ultimately, I think, not in the best interest of the city. So I'm going to vote no.
Commissioner Hempstead?
Yes, I would like to, I would, maybe the other commissioners feel that way too. They probably need a more lengthy discussion sometime in the future, to try and balance this out. But, TOD's been around. I've been dealing with it for over 30 years. When I was on the city council back in the 90s, it was the big thing. And, everybody was going to have an apartment next to a railroad station or a bus station, and nobody was going to have a car. And we're 35 years later. And I'm not being negative. I'm just trying to say most people would want that freedom to go where they want to go. I mean, Galen brought up a good point. We could always have a taxi, but Galen, I bet you got 2 cars. I mean that negative. So I do too, my household. So it's just, Milwaukee's has a huge inner core city. Stanford tore everything down to make that happen. So Norwalk decided to keep its historic character. So I'm a yes.
And Commissioner Bryce.
Did you get Tammy? Sorry, I missed that if so.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. Okay. I am a no.
I believe that was.
I tallied 5 yeses, 3 noes, 1 abstention. And I think that
Yep.
brings us to 9.
Yep. So motion carries.
Motion carries. All right. Doug, on that point, we can absolutely continue this discussion. I would ask not tonight in the sake of time, but during commissioner comments, we can always open this up as a topic we can discuss further and turn that into future amendments and regulation changes as we see fit. And not just for this topic, for any topic, but I know we've had a lot of late meetings recently, and I appreciate all of you continuing to attend late. And so in the interest of time, I will move us to acceptance of the minutes. I'll ask those that weren't there to abstain from this, but is there a motion for the minutes from June 3rd? Is that a move to approve, Tammy? Seconded from Harvey. All those in favor? All right. And all those abstaining? And Jay, I think you need to abstain from this one as well because you weren't there. And then otherwise, or any opposed? Oh, great, that carries. We'll now move to Steve. Any comments of director? Okay, we have a meeting next.
See you next Wednesday.
Yeah, see you next Wednesday. Any comments of commissioners? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'd just like to welcome our new members because we didn't really get a chance to do that in the beginning. So thank you both for your willingness to serve. We look forward to having more conversations, perhaps not even on Zoom.
Preferably.
Yeah. Perhaps not even at 11:30 at night.
Right.
Next week is hybrid, so you'll be at City Hall if you so choose.
Is there a motion to adjourn? All right, all those in favor, and we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, what do you think?
Yeah.